Toru is a lowlife bum who rents the cheapest apartment he can find to stay afloat. The agent literally gifts him the apartment because it's popularly known to be haunted, but our boy's luck changes when he finds that his room is connected to a dungeon where he finds an entirely new world of hot elves, slimes, female knights, and beast women who want to do nasty things with him. This story begins when a guy named Suzu goes to rent an apartment, but the deal seems fishy. He asks the agent if the house has a ghost, because that'll be the only reason they're renting a 2-bedroom apartment in the city for only 30,000 yen per month. The agent calls him a joker and says there aren't any ghosts. Suzu is relieved, but the agent adds that people have not mentioned ghosts but have mentioned goblins and slimes. Shocked, Subai asks him to repeat himself, but the agent just asks him to sign the rental agreement. Even though something feels off, Subai doesn't feel he has much of an option since he's a college dropout stuck going through part-time jobs. He eventually signs the rental agreement, since it's such a great offer. Later on, he checks the house and finds the reason it's quite cheap is because it's connected to a dungeon. He recalls that around noon, the fishy real estate agent followed him to the apartment and gave him the keys, but he slightly remembers that the guy seemed to be practically running when leaving. After the movers brought in his stuff, he decided to unpack things and arrange them around. After it got dark, he went out to grab a bite, but he found himself in a pitch-black stone-clad room that stretched out who knows how far. So he remembers the weird comment about goblins and slimes. Terrified, he realizes this is an actual dungeon. He realizes why no one else wants it, and he wonders if he can live here safely. Eventually, he realizes he has no choice but to stay here, so he heads in to have a seat. He soon starts to panic and wonders if he'll be able to get back to the real world, but he's surprised when he notices streetlights from the window. When he checks it out, he finds out he's back in regular old Japan, and he's back in the middle of Tachikawa in Tokyo. He wonders what on earth is going on with the apartment, and he realizes it's possible it's just the front door that leads to the dungeon. It's clear to him that he'd only be able to get to the city through the window, but this might be a great blessing since he's still got a great deal on the house. He considers it a man's dream to be able to explore a dungeon, so he cheerfully heads out to grab some supplies since it's all worked out. He soon returns with some tools, which include a helmet with a headlamp as well as a mountain climbing pickaxe. After he gears up, he heads out to go check the dungeon. At first, he leans against the front door but is unable to hear anything, so he concludes that he'll be able to open the front door without being attacked. After he peeks through, he turns on his headlamp, which allows him to see. He notices he's in a large room or space, and hopes there aren't any goblins hiding behind the pillars. Suddenly, he hears a sound coming from beyond the pillar, and he wonders if it's goblins. He notices there seems to be only one person there based on the sound, so he reminds himself he can always run back to his apartment if things go south. Slowly, he tiptoes to the pillar, and when he peeks, he sees someone lying on the ground, so he rushes back because he's almost certain he saw a goblin. He notices that it looks kind of weak, but when he looks closer, he realizes it's not a goblin. It looks like a human girl who's dressed like a knight from one of those video games, and he notices the girl seems to be crying. He wonders if it's a trap, but he also wonders if she's really human and can't move. He gets conflicted because he can't leave her here because she could be some random Japanese citizen that got trapped here. He also remembers good old Granny always telling him to be nice to others, even though she probably didn't mean people in dark dungeons. After looking around and confirming no one is around, he gets close but notices a strong-looking iron door behind the lady. He's fairly certain the goblins are hiding behind the door to chop his head off and using her as bait. He decides to toss a stone at the girl, and she screams in pain and tells him to stop. He realizes she wasn't speaking Japanese, and even though he didn't understand the words, he somehow knew the meaning. He asks the girl if she's all right, but she tells him to stay away. Suzu is surprised she understood what he said, so he says he's going to come closer. The girl tells him not to come near her, but he tells her it seems she can't move. She insists she can, but Suzu tells her it's clear she can't. When he comes close, he tells her he'll help her, but she tries to stop him from attacking her, and she pleads with him not to kill her. Suzu becomes confused, so the girl offers to do his cleaning or washing as long as he doesn't kill her, referring to him as Lord Goblin. Confused, Suzu wonders why she thinks he's a goblin, and he soon realizes she can't see him because of the glare of the headlamp. He decides to turn the lamp towards himself, so she can take another look, but the fool doesn't realize that's what kids do to scare each other in dark places. The look on his face scares the living daylight out of her, and she passes out. Suzu starts to panic, but he realizes she's still breathing. For some reason, she seems to be soaked in her own pee due to fear or something, so he decides to help her up so she doesn't wake up embarrassed. He carries her on his back, and he struggles to grip her wet thighs since they're streaming with fear juices. Subai realizes he can't take her shield with him, so he decides to leave it. He carries her back to the apartment, but since he's not set up his apartment yet, he puts her in the tatami room. After he drops her on the bed, he realizes taking off her armor and the soaked clothes might be misunderstood. He also notices she's very pretty and quite elegant, almost like a well-made doll. Suddenly he starts to get sleepy, and he struggles to stay awake, but he's soon knocked out by sleep. Sometime later he hears someone refer to him as Sir and Master Mage. The voice asks him if he's awake, and Suzu soon wakes up. He notices he's in the tatami room of his new apartment, and recalls he had a very weird dream about entering a dungeon and saving a random girl. He notices how comfortable his pillow is even though it has a stench, so he squeezes it. When he feels it again, he jumps backwards when he realizes it's a girl's thigh. When he sees the girl, he hastily apologizes, but she tells him that she understands. She says she feels like she should be the one apologizing since she woke him up from a peaceful sleep. She adds that it makes sense that a mage would succumb to sleep in such a comfortable room, and Suitboy wonders why she's mistaking him for a mage. The lady apologizes for mistaking him for a goblin earlier, because she couldn't see his face, and he was speaking the monster language. Confused, Subai wonders what she means by monster language, so she tells him he's speaking it right now. Subai soon realizes that the language of the monsters in the dungeon world must have been Japanese, and that's why she thought he was one. Subai admits he speaks Japanese, but he tells her he's not a mage. This surprises her, since he's living in a strange room so deep in the dungeon, so she thought he must be a great mage. She also commends the gently cushioned floor which she could sleep on forever, and adds that she thought his elaborate dolls were some sort of magic item. Suzu realizes she's referring to his anime dolls from his otaku life, but we also hope that's all he does with them. To preserve his perverseness, he tells the girl that he's a mage, and the dolls are actually magic items and they're not suspicious. The girl becomes relieved because she feared he's a dark wizard with a grudge against humanity, especially because the dolls are half naked. In a panic, Suzu explains that he's a good mage, so he asks her how she's feeling. The girl explains that she was hit with a paralyzing poison in the dungeon and was unable to move, but it seems to be wearing off. She thanks him for saving her, and she says she'll do anything to show him her thanks. The mention of anything surprises Suzu, and his cultured juices start flowing. The fool starts to think about doing nasty things with her that the goblins would do, but soon shakes out the idea because he knows his granny wouldn't approve of that. Eventually, he tells her he's happy to help, and there's no need to worry about repaying him. However, the girl insists that she must because as a former knight, she'll remember his kindness for the rest of her life. Finally, Suzu asks her for her name, so she introduces herself as Arya Eldrax, but she asks him to call her Ria. Even though she gave him permission, Suzu doesn't feel comfortable calling such a beautiful girl he just met by her first name. Moments later, Ria asks him what his own name is, and he starts to worry that an ordinary name like Suzu won't compare to something grand like Eldrax. To keep up his mage appearance, he gives his first name, which is Turu, so she calls him Master Turu and commends his splendid name. Apparently Taru actually gave her that name because he just wanted to hear her say his first name. Later Ria tells him he's created incredible artifacts and has become a mage at such a young age, so Taru realizes she's referring to the items he got from the video games and books. Based on Ria's appearance, he figures that the technology in the dungeon world is probably around the level of the Middle Ages, so it explains why she believes the things in the room are artifacts. He wonders how he'll reply to what she said about him becoming a mage at a young age. He soon starts to stutter and says he went to the Imperial University, and that amazes Ria, so she asks him if he's referring to the Emperor's court. Happy to get a lucky break, Toru says yes because he became a court magician at 6. Then he says he resigned and devoted himself to magic, which is why he's only 21 years old. She explains that he's quite young, and adds that they're just 3 years apart. He wonders how old she is, so she tells him she's only 18 years old. Later he asks her if the reason she collapsed was because of the monster's paralysis poison, and she says it's true. She says she was attacked by monsters, and it was so dark that she couldn't move and she was terrified. Toru realizes it was so scary and that was why she wet herself. He tells her it must be awful to be stuck like that and unable to move, so he heads out to prepare a bath for her. This surprises Ria because she believes a bath in the dungeon might be dangerous, but Toru assures her it's okay. When Toru enters his bathroom, his inner perviness kicks in again, and he thinks about how he's always wanted to have a girl use his bath, and he's excited the first person to use his bath in the new house is a girl. He goes to meet her, and believes she should be able to walk since the paralysis should have worn off. When he enters the room, he finds her trembling and crawling, with tears in her eyes. Ria starts to apologize because she just noticed she's disgraced herself. When he mentioned the bath, Toru realizes she's just noticing that she wet herself, so Toru comforts her by saying she was paralyzed and there was no bathroom to use. She soon grabs a hold of him and notices his shirt is wet, so Turo says he carried her back. She starts to tremble again because of what she has done to a mage. Turo tries to tell her these things happen, but she insists they never happen. Turo admits that it's true that people don't go around peeing on mages, but Ryer starts to lament that she'll never be a bride because of this. Suddenly Turo says he'll have to marry her in that case, and that stuns Raya, and she stops crying. Surprised, she asks him what he's saying, so Toru realizes he's messed up. He tries to tell her it's a joke, and her expression soon turns morbid as she asks him if he thinks this is something one should joke about. Eventually she stubs him and tries to go to the bath, but Toru tells her to wait because there are some things he must show her first. He helps her up and then shows her the entranceway where he asks her to leave her shoes. She apologizes because she didn't know, and starts to remove her shoes. Toru also suggests he remove her armor, so Ria asks him to help because she still can't move her arms that well. After he removes the strap off her back, Toru's heart starts to race, and he wonders why. After that, he takes her into the bathroom, and it surprises her that there's really a bathroom in the dungeon. She wonders what kind of place this is, but Toru just asks her to sit in the bathtub. This all surprises Ria because the nobles and those in the royal houses have this where she came from. Toru realizes only rich people have bathtubs in her world, so he asks her if they also have shower heads. Ria tells him she doesn't know what it is, so he tells her he didn't expect her to know because it's a special artifact that he made. He shows her how to make water come out of it by turning the tap, and how she can adjust the temperature whenever she wants. Ria suddenly freezes, so Toru wonders if he's messed up again by showing her something unimpressive. However, Ria is shocked by how warm the water is, especially when there's no fire. Toru tells her he uses fire magic and water magic, and that amazes Ria. She's amazed that other mages make artifacts for bathing, but he was thoughtful enough to make one for bathing. Loving all the attention, Toru turns it up a notch and shows her another magical artifact. Ria is surprised because she's never seen such a smooth container, so he shows her how to push the top to bring out soap or shampoo blend that will leave her hair silky smooth. Surprised, she eagerly tries it, and she loves the smell. Later, Toru heads to let her bathe, and he tells her he'll leave a change of clothes for her on the side of the door. After he steps out, he realizes the only thing he has for her to change into are t-shirts and sweatpants. As for underwear, he realizes she'll have to do without for now. He wonders if he should tell her the only cloth he has for her is a t-shirt, so she can move around with only a top, but he shakes the thoughts out of his head because his granny wouldn't approve of that. He heads to the door and asks Ria if he can come into the changing room to drop the clothes, and she tells him he can come in. When he opens the door, he realizes she must be enjoying the bath, and he tries his best not to stare into the bathroom. He quickly drops the clothes because he realizes he might actually turn into a dark wizard if he keeps standing there. As he's about to step out, he hears Ria scream, so he calls out to her to ask what's wrong. She suddenly shouts out no, and he wonders if it's a goblin or a slime. He quickly goes to grab his pickaxe and he rushes into the bathroom. When he enters, he notices the shower head flailing around, and he hears Ria saying the water is freezing. He realizes she might have gotten the knobs confused, and might have mistakenly turned the temperature to the coldest setting, which was what shocked her. He quickly turns off the tap, and he shows her that she must turn the tap slowly so it can change the temperature. He soon finds her trembling while naked, and he screams out and covers his face. He tries to explain that this isn't what it looks like, so he rushes out. As he's about to leave, Ria grabs him from behind and she tells him she was so scared. Toru realizes she just had a terrible experience in a dungeon not knowing when she was going to be attacked, and now she's surrounded by things she's never seen before, so it's normal that she's on edge. He turns to ask her if she's alright, so she apologizes to him. Eventually, she pleads with him to stay longer, so Toru decides to sit outside the door and chat with her while she has her bath. Sometime later, Toru decides to go into the dungeon again, maybe hoping to find more hot chicks. When he confirms that there are no monsters around, he calls upon his status to open. A status window suddenly appears, and his stats are displayed. Toru is shocked that it worked just like Ria said. Apparently, while talking with Ria, he learned a lot from her. She told him the dungeon attached to his apartment is a remnant of an ancient underground empire, and the monsters in the dungeon are notoriously dangerous. Apparently, the paralysis poison that Ria got hit with came from the blow darts that are used by a cunning group of goblins. While they were chatting, Ria had told him that she has a pretty high agility score even though she's a knight. She also mentioned slimes that tend to get away quickly, but are worth huge reward experience points. Toru asks her more about the slimes, and he also asks her how normal people check their stats, and he claims he has another special way of checking his as a mage. Ria tells him there's more than one way, and she first talks about how she knows he already knows the technique of calling the numbers up in his mind by meditating on it. When Ria tries to summon her stats, she starts to panic when it doesn't work, so Toru tells her that he put magic around the apartment that blocks people from checking stats, but it'll work in the dungeon. That relieves Ria, and Toru realizes that it's most likely that this room has to follow the rules of the world, but he may be able to access some cool stuff if he enters the dungeon. He wonders if he'll even find some skills and abilities. He asks Ria about the iron door that was behind her when she passed out, and asks if monsters can't get through it, so she tells him she closed the door to escape from the monsters before she succumbed to the poison. Toru realizes that's why he didn't see any monsters, so he tells Ria he could help her get her shield from the dungeon. Ria appreciates that, but becomes worried for him, so he assures her that it's fine. In the present, Toru quickly writes down his stats, but he doesn't know it's not necessary for one to shout out to check one's stats. When he checks his stats, he realizes he's not very strong at all, which is expected for a beginner, so he comforts himself with the potential of growth. What interests him is that he has a skill called no level cap, which would mean his max level possibility is infinity. This excites him, and because he has MP points, he believes he might be able to use magic. He unequips the pickaxe and the helmet to check his raw attack power and defense, and he realizes he's practically left with nothing if he removes those. He moves forward to retrieve Ria's shield, and he moves carefully to steer clear of monsters. He worries that a monster might be hiding under the shield, and when he pulls it up, a slime appears from underneath it. Shocked, he quickly slams the slime with his pickaxe. Then he picks up the shield and runs back to the door. While running, he checks his status again. When he finally gets to this room, he rejoices that he made it out alive, and also because he increased his level by defeating the slimes. He believes he must be the first Japanese or the first human to defeat a monster and level up. He also notices his strength stat has gone up, and he wonders if he should test it. He goes to check on Ria, but she asks him if she can spend a bit more time in the bath. He tells her she can, so he rushes to grab his grip strength scale to test his strength. When he does that, he realizes his grip is at 44 kg, and he's surprised because he always maxed out at 40 before now. Since each point increases his strength by 4 kg, he believes he'll be able to grip like 80 kg when he reaches 20 strength points. He decides to level up till he can crush apples with his bare hands. Such a lofty goal. Suddenly Rizan tells him he seems happy about something. She eventually tells him the clothes he lent her are quite comfortable, but she thinks they look strange on her. At first, Toru is amazed by her beauty, but he tells her they look fine and her hairstyle really suits her. She starts to blush and thanks him, and she says it came undone when she collapsed, but she wears it this way. She says the hair smells so great thanks to the soap, and Toru wishes he can smell the hair too, but unfortunately he can't. Ria asks him if he'll also be using the bath, and he says he will. She mentions that she saw some spellbooks in the room she slept earlier, and asks if she can read them while he bathes. Toru wonders what she's talking about, and he realizes she's probably referring to his manga and magazines. Suddenly he becomes alarmed and he rushes into the room and asks her to wait here. He quickly rushes into the room to hide some magazines she shouldn't see because she'll know all the dirty things he likes to see. Later, Toru comes out and sits Ria down. He tells her that the stuff in the books are very dangerous for ordinary people to read, and he says they're forbidden tomes. Ria starts to tremble because she almost read them, so Toru assures her that he's put it somewhere where she can't see them. Toru realizes it's a good thing Ria's so obedient, because this could have ended badly. She soon asks for permission to ask a question, and he tells her to shoot. So she asks if it was alright to use so much bathwater, and asks if it isn't a precious resource. Toru tells her not to worry because it's drawn from an underground reserve. She eventually asks if she can drink some of it, and Toru realizes drinkable water must be very rare in the dungeon. He says that may be too much to ask, but Toru tells her he can have some. Instead of water, he gives her some drinks, so she asks him what these are. Toru explains that these are drinks. He shows her the water, milk, and then black tea. She says she's heard of black tea, but it's quite rare and expensive. He also shows her cola, so she gets gloomy because she's never heard of it. She wonders if it can be drunk, but Toru tells her to have fun and goes into the bath. She asks him if she's sure about this because drinks are so precious, but Toru tells her not to worry about it. He soon goes into the bath and he thinks about the fact that Ria was just in there. When he comes out, he realizes Ria must be hungry too, so he starts to think of what food to make. He finds Ria gagging because of the taste of one of the drinks, so he tells her she doesn't have to finish it if she doesn't like it. However, she insists she'll take it all because she's not a kid who won't take her potions. Toru tells her cola isn't a potion, which surprises her because the numbness in her feet has been clearing up. Toru quickly clears up the confusion to keep up his mage act, and says that cola is a type of potion. Ria tells him his artifacts are amazing, especially because it takes a mid-level restorative spell to fully cure it. It intrigues Toru that cola acts as a strong antidote in the other world, and he wonders if there are other foods with special benefits like this. So he asks her what type of food adventurers eat while in dungeons, so Ria tells him they usually have a hardtack bread that's dry as a rock, or dried and salted fish. She says it isn't tasty, but she's always grateful to have the food, even though it can be soaked in hot water to soften it. Toru realizes she's had it rough, and when Ria notices a nice smell, she asks him if he's cooking something. Toru tells her he's making dinner and he says he's a good cook because he does some part-time work in a diner kitchen. This surprises Ria, especially because food is so precious in the dungeon and he's already given her drinks. However, Toru reminds her that the body won't have energy without food, and he says he's already making one for her. Suddenly, she dashes off and asks him to wait a moment. When she returns, she apologizes because this is all she has and pleads with him to accept the few coins she has. Surprised, Toru tells her she doesn't have to, but Ria insists she can't accept that. Toru realizes he can't take money from a woman in trouble, so he needs a reason to refuse it. Because of that, he tells her he's a mage and he doesn't need money, but he's holed up in a dungeon far below the surface, so he tells her it'll be enough for her to tell him what's happening in the world above. She tells him she wouldn't mind doing that, but it doesn't seem like a fair exchange. Since that isn't enough, he asks her if she can assist him in creating an artifact, even though he's simply referring to helping him put his bed together. That offer sits well with Ria, and she admits that she's short on money right now, which is embarrassing. Toru tells her he'll make dinner for the both of them, so Ria thanks him profusely. After he sets the table, Ria is surprised he finished so quickly, especially because the dishes look so elaborate. She tells him they smell so good and they must be delicious. But Turo knows it's just some pre-made hamburg steaks and microwaved rice that he made together, and the only thing made from scratch was the salad. Ria's stomach suddenly growls, and she becomes red with embarrassment, so Turo suggests they start eating. When he sits, Ria asks how she should eat these, so he tells her she can cut the hamburg steak into pieces with the knife. He demonstrates how to eat it, so she tries it too, and has a bite. It tastes so good that she admits that she's never eaten anything so good before, but Toru tells her she just thinks that because she's starving. Ria insists she's serious and says food wasn't this tasty, even when she lived in the manor house. After they finish dinner, Toru cleans up and asks her if she can tell him some stories about the world above. When he brings some chips and tea, he tells her it's an after-dinner treat. They soon start eating, so she tells him it's delicious. She starts to get refreshed, so she asks if these are also restorative artifacts like the cola. She adds that the effect is temporary though because she could feel her physical and magical energy being replenished when she ate the food earlier. Toru is surprised by how much of a video game this sounds like, since one can make food that boosts their stats. Because of this, Toru decides to test out a few things and considers picking some things up before going to bed, so he asks Ria if she wants to head out for a little bit. Confused, she asks him what he means by out, so Toru realizes she doesn't understand because she thinks they're in a dungeon. He wonders how she didn't notice the things outside the window while she was in the tatami room. He quickly drags her towards a nearby room and asks her what she sees through the window. Confused, she tells him all she sees is a window that faces the wall of the dungeon, and she says she thought he was trying to be artistic. Shocked, Toro wonders why Ria can only see a stone wall on the other side of the window, but he can see Japan. When he pokes his head through, she's shocked that he has a spell to pass through walls. Eventually, Toru has to go shopping alone because they couldn't find a way to get Ria outside. When he returns, he hears her talk from the bathroom, so he goes to check on her to see what she's doing. He finds her doing some laundry, and he sees her hand washing her underwear, so he guesses that's how people did it in the Middle Ages. He asks her what she's using for soap, so she says she used the body wash, and asks if that's wrong. Turo tells her it's fine, but he has an artifact for washing in his apartment, pointing to his washing machine. She quickly apologizes, but Turo tells her it's fine. Later, she asks him if he has anything for hanging clothes to dry, so he goes to bring it. He soon gives her the hanger, but he becomes speechless when he sees her holding one of his underwear. She excitedly tells him that she saw them in the basket, so she decided to wash them. She wonders if she did the wrong thing, but Turu tells her it's totally fine, and thanks her. Shortly after, she asks him if he has a rag and some olive oil to clean her armor, so he gives them to her. She quickly rushes to the armor to clean it up, so Turu decides not to disturb her further and to assemble his bed himself. When he reads the manual, he learns that it requires 2 or more people for assembly, but he decides to do it alone. Moments later, he starts to struggle with putting the pieces together, so he realizes this is harder than he thought. Ria notices him and asks if he's building furniture. Soon enough, they set it up together, and Ria bounces on the bed. They finish late in the night, so Turu tells Ria she can take the bed, and that surprises her because he wouldn't have anywhere to sleep. He tells her he'll sleep on the tatami, but Ria refuses and says she'll sleep on the tatami instead. Turu tries to insist that she's tired, but she overwhelms him with her stubbornness, and she takes the tatami. As he's about to turn off the light bulb, which he refers to as the light artifact, she stares absently, and when he asks, she reminds him he hasn't said goodnight. Confused, he says goodnight and goes to sleep. While on his bed, Turu is unable to sleep and he wonders if it's because he gave his pillow to Ria. Suddenly, Ria opens his door and asks him if he'd like the pillow. Confused, he asks her what's wrong, so she says she wasn't using the pillow and hands it to him. She suddenly starts to tremble, so Turu gets an idea and asks her if she'd like to sleep on the mattress artifact with him since it's very comfortable. She nods in acceptance and lies on the bed, but her hands continue to tremble. Turu eventually grabs her hand and squeezes it to help calm her down. She tells him his hand is warm and feels safe, then thanks him before she falls asleep. The next morning, Raya greets Turo good morning. When he wakes up, but he jumps back in surprise. He soon remembers he slept off next to her, and he freaked out because the only woman he's woken up next to is his mother. Raya wonders what's wrong, so Turo apologizes that he's developed a deep trauma from the prejudice of the world and from battles. Worried, she asks him if he'll be fine, so he tells her he'll be. Turo remembers all that happened yesterday, but the most amazing part to him is that this beautiful lady is in his apartment. Eventually, he suggests they have breakfast. After they had breakfast, they started to unpack things. While they're packing, Turo asks Raya if the dragon folks are still living on the volcanoes on the surface. He's asking based on his knowledge of fantasy fiction. Raya tells him that the dragon folk don't generally appear before commoners, so she doesn't know, so he asks her what races are friendly with humans these days. Raya tells him the elves are friendly with humans, as well as cat people as long as you stay out of the forest. Turo is glad there are hot elf chicks and actual cat people like in these fantasies. Luckily, Raya finds a book about elves, and she notices how the female elf on the cover seems to be fighting tentacle monsters. She asks Turu if she can read it, but he quickly snatches it from her and goes to hide it with his stash. When he returns, he tells her that the book is one of the forbidden tomes and is dangerous. He eventually suggests they take a break, so they both go grab a drink. While Ria drinks, Toru points out that she seems to have taken a liking to cola, so she admits that the fizz and the sweetness are quite addictive once you get used to it. Later, Toru asks her about the dangerous monsters in the dungeon, and specifically about the dangerous slimes there. Ria mentions the purple poison slimes that are very toxic, and the yellow-brownish acid slimes that can spit corrosive fluid. She says those are the most dangerous slimes, and mentions that she assumed he already knows about them. Toru tells her he hasn't fought any monsters recently, even though he's never fought any other than that one slime. After that, they went back to unpacking. Suddenly, Ria finds something else, and Toru becomes worried that she's found another one of his treasures. Ria shows him some adorable clothes, but it includes a cosplay gym uniform and a cosplay school swimsuit. Toru starts to sweat bullets, so Ria becomes worried that they're also dangerous items also. Toru tells her they're not, but he apparently bought them on impulse because he felt she could wear them under her armor, because clothes from this world could have some special effects in the dungeon. He tries to convince himself that it's not that he wanted to see her in those skimpy outfits, but we both know that's not true. Ria tells him she's never seen clothes like these and asks if they're artifacts. She asks if they're from women, so Toru, who's still spitballing, says he sometimes gets requests for female clothing, and she can have them. Excited, Ria heads out to go try them on. While he waits, Toru can't believe this is really happening. Shortly after, she returns and asks him what he thinks and if the clothes suit her. For a moment, he doesn't reply, but she doesn't realize that he's trying not to stare at the sight of her plots wrapped up in those snug shorts. He starts to fantasize about her smooth, long thighs and starts to think about how he would love to sleep on them. When Ria asks him what he means about sleep, he realizes he was thinking out loud, so he quickly tells her the clothes look good on her. Inside him, Toru thanks the apartment dungeon for sending this cool chick to him, and he tells the apartment he owes him one. When it got dark, they finished the first phase of the unpacking, and they took a break after dinner. While they're sitting, Toru asks Ria what her plans are after this, and he asks her if she plans to go back to the surface soon. Ria becomes gloomy and says she isn't. Apparently, she was with a party, but they got split up and she lost her sword. She says she can't get back to the surface by herself, and Toru realizes she must be scared to go back there after what happened to her. She eventually says that she was hoping that she'd be able to join the other adventurers when they show up. She asks him if it'd be much trouble to let her stay here until then, so Toru tells her it's not. He jokes that she could even stay here forever, but we both know bro is praying. She says yes. She thanks him but says she eventually needs to return to the surface, and when he tells her it's fine, she asks him if she can come back to the room to see him sometime. Toru tells her she can come whenever she likes, and they share a moment. Later, Ria asks if she can use the bath, so Toru decides to check out the dungeon again while she's there. After peering through the door, he doesn't find any monster, and he tells himself that he's not too worried about goblins anymore. According to Ria, monsters usually don't show up in empty rooms, but he wonders why that slime showed up in a place he had confirmed was empty. Apparently, slimes start around the size of an eraser, and then grow up until they're large enough to attack humans, so it's probably a slime that was overlooked and was growing under the shield. Toru opens his bag, which he's filled with several snacks. Instead of carrying grenades and AK-47, he actually brought the food to see what special effects different foods have in this world, so he starts snacking. After performing some tests, he notices that different foods boost different stats in this world, and they seem to boost them by about 50%. Some foods also don't seem to have any effect, and some only have recovery effects. After getting some more points, he decides to check out the practical effect of boost in stats by using his test grip tester. This time, he's about to pull 64 kg, which excites him. He looks around hoping to get stronger, but he doesn't seem to be able to find any more slimes. Suddenly, he finds a small guy on the ground, but he realizes that defeating this little guy won't bring much XP. Because of that, he decides to raise it until it's stronger than defeat it, and he also wonders if it'll multiply if he takes care of it. He wonders if he can breed monsters for easy level ups, so he decides to take the slime back home. After putting the slime in a box, he gives it some water and vegetable scraps and punches. He notices this slime is white, and he recalls that Ria said it's purple and yellow ones that are dangerous. For a while, he notices how cute it looks and starts to consider keeping it as a pet instead of as a target. He also wonders what Ria would think if she saw it, because she might be uneasy around monsters. When he hears her coming out of the bath, he rushes to keep it in the box with his adult magazine since he's already told her not to look in here. He puts the slime in the box and tells it can read the forbidden tomes while it chills and becomes a cultured slime. When he steps out, Ria tells him he can have his bath now, so he goes in. While he's bathing, he considers the fact that keeping something from another world in Japan isn't such a good idea, especially because Ria might find it. He gets up and decides to find a way to keep it in the dungeon. He gets back to the box and notices one of the clips came undone, and he wonders if he forgot to latch it. When he steps out, Ria asks him if he's going somewhere, but he hides the box behind him and tells her he's going to step into the dungeon for a few minutes. He enters the dungeon and drops the box, but he assures the slime that he'll bring it more food in a larger tank. When he returns, Ria welcomes him and asks what he's doing. He eventually asks her if she's seen any white slimes in the dungeon lately, so she tells him that she heard that white slimes have gone extinct. This surprises Toru, so she explains that they're a rare monster that wouldn't attack humans, but no one has seen one in at least 20 years. That pleases Toru, so he wonders if he can keep it in the apartment since it can't attack anyone. He decides to go back into the dungeon to get it back. When he gets there, he notices that his Tupperware has been opened and the slime is gone. When he checks inside the box, he notices a small Kokoron Miru figure inside. When he touches it, he realizes the figure is all soft and squishy, which is a nice texture, but he wonders why it's here in the dungeon. He wonders if one of his figures from his clothes got caught in his clothes and fell out, and even remembers that he doesn't remember buying such a figure. He decides to keep the figure in his pocket, and he tries to look for the white slime. He instead finds a blue slime, and he decides to keep it even though it's not as cute as the white. The slime bites him while he tries to keep it in, so he decides to keep it in the dungeon until it gets bigger. When he returns, Ria welcomes him and says it took some time, so he says he got caught up researching his forbidden tomes. He notices that the figurine he brought is top-notch quality, and he drops it on a nearby counter. Later he and Ria go to bed. While they're in bed, Toru realizes he can't sleep. Because Ria was too afraid to go to bed, she's sleeping beside him again, but the issue is that she's now wearing gym shorts and her bare legs are touching him. He wishes he was wearing shorts so he can feel her skin against his, and no matter what he does, he is unable to sleep. When he finally opens his eyes, he finds Ria standing over him, and she asks him if he can't also sleep. When he turns to his side, he's shocked to see Ria sleeping there, and he can't believe that there are two of her. Toru wonders what's going on since Ria is sleeping next to him, but there's another in front of him. However, this Ria is tiny, and Toru wonders if he's seeing things. This new Ria mentions that she tried to take a form that her master would accept, so she asks him what he thinks. Confused, he asks her what she is, so the new Ria wonders if she's made a mistake. She pulls down her pants and says she's certain she even got the underneath parts correct, but Toru screams out in shock. His scream wakes Ria up, so he quickly puts the smaller Ria into his pocket. When the real Ria wakes up, she asks him if everything is alright, so he says he had a nightmare about his time in the 5th Great Magic War, but Ria says she doesn't remember that conflict. She admits that it sounds rough, but assures him that everything is fine because she's right next to him. She eventually sang to him to help him sleep, but she ended up being the first one to sleep. Toru quickly steps out and brings out the smaller Ria, who he finds crying. The small Ria asks Toru if he doesn't like this form either, but he asks her to just pull up her undies. The small Ria says she's not a bad slime, and when she starts to cry again, Toru tells her not to cry and asks if she's the white slime. The little Ria says she is, so Toru asks her why she turned into Kokoroni Miru and Ria, so the slime said it's because he seemed to like them. He asks her why she keeps calling him master, so she tells him it's because he's the first person she ever saw. Toru realizes she's like a freshly hatched chick. The slime tells him she's following him around because she loves him, and that makes Toru giddy because she's saying it in Ria's voice. The slime admits that thinking about him makes her feel warm and fuzzy, so she'll do anything for him. Toru finds her adorable, so he asks her if she's female. The slime explains that slimes don't have genders, but that won't matter. She soon jumps down and climbs up his trouser, which shocks Toru. When it slips out, Toru asks it what it's doing, so it apologizes and explains that it just did a quick scan. The slime soon transforms back into Ria and draws down its pants to show him what it means. Toru tries to cover his eyes, but when he peeks through, he sees that the slime has now created a male reproductive organ for itself, causing Toru to scream. When he screams, Ria rushes out to know what happened, so Toru hides the slime. Toru quickly apologizes and explains that he had a nightmare about the time he tried to shut down an overloading magical reactor, and he must have sleepwalked into the room. Ria tells him it's all right, and tells him he can just sleep next to her. They soon go into the room, and Ria falls asleep again after trying to put Toru to sleep. A few minutes later, Toru goes to see the slime, so it apologizes and explains that it just wanted to show him that it can be both genders. Toru asks it to pick just one, so the slime says it'll go with whatever he tells it to do. It also adds that it can quickly grow larger if it eats human food, so it can be able to do more things for him, including naughty stuff. Shocked, Toru tells her she doesn't need to do that, and asks her why she wants to be told what to do. The slime explains that she's a white slime, and tells him a story about how white slimes lived in harmony with humans. They took the form of something their chosen master loved because loving and being loved is the way of the white slimes. However, their ability to change shape and get affection from their masters turned out to be too much temptation, and some humans started using white slimes for terrible things. Because of this, white slimes left the humans and retreated into the deepest parts of the dungeon. However, she says that she doesn't believe that all humans are bad people, so she decided to climb through the dungeon even though the other white slimes objected. She tells him she was so glad he was the first person she saw. Toru tells her he'll give her lots of food so she can be able to help out with things. She asks him if that includes naughty things, so he tells her no. He asks her what sort of food she likes, so the slime says that according to the elder slimes, all human food is nice to them. Because of that, Toru prepares some food for her which she gladly eats. Toru asks her what she normally eats, so she says mostly dungeon moss or monster carcasses which are rarer. When she tries to pick the food with her fork, Toru tells her she can just eat in slime form if it's too hard. The slime says she heard humans get angry when they're not in their favorite form, so Toru promises her he won't get angry, and she turns into a slime. She soon turns back into a slime and starts to feed. While she's feeding, Toru asks her if she has a name, so she tells him she doesn't. Because of that, Toru suggests giving her a name, and that excites her because she's heard they all used to get names when they were friends with humans. Eventually, Toru asks her what she thinks of Shizuku, because of how clear and round she looks. The slime excitedly tells him she loves it, and from then she started bearing Shizuku. Shortly after, Shizuku becomes larger, so Toru realizes the world's food has some bonus effects, and it seems extra nutritious for slimes. Shizuku says that she should be able to transform into a full-sized human at this size by inflating her center with water, and then filling the center with water. They excitedly head to the bathroom, so Toru sprays her with some water, and she transforms into a full-sized Rhea. When she transforms, Shizuku tells him that her body feels heavy because she's carrying all that water now, but it will be better if she grows larger. Toru asks her if she wants more food, and Shizuku agrees because human food is delicious. He soon gives her some udon, which she gobbles up quickly. After that, she has a pizza with a white bread crust, and she eats that, confessing that she doesn't want to ever stop eating. After that, she has some milk and a red bean bun. She enjoys that too, and while she's eating, she asks him if there's something in particular that he wants her to help him with. Toru tells her he works part-time in a diner, and she tells him she understands what it means to work part-time but doesn't know what a diner is. Toru asks her how she knows what part-time means, so she tells him she saw it in his forbidden tomes. Toru wonders if she knows what the forbidden tomes actually are, so he explains what a diner is. Toru tells her that he was hoping that while he's at work, she can take his form and stay here with Rhea, and Shizuku promises to do her best for her master. Toru thanks her because he was worried about leaving Rhea alone, and he asks her if she wants to try transforming into him. She suddenly grabs him, and when he asks her what she's doing, he says he needs to scan him thoroughly since she'll be transforming into all of him. She starts to become liquid and seep into his body, so he asks her to be gentle this time. The Furu starts to giggle because it tickles, but he has to wait until Shizuku completes her scan. The Furu tells her she should have warned him before going to his underwear area, so she apologizes. Soon after, she transforms into him, which excites Tefuru. He tells Shizuku to keep Rhea company while he's at work, and reminds her to try to act like a mage. Before he leaves, Shizuku asks him if he's really okay with her staying here while he's out working, and if she should just go to work in his stead. Toru thanks her but refuses because he'd feel bad if he made her do his work for him. Shizuku complains that he gave her so much food, which must cost a lot, so she'd like to find a way to pay him back. She has a point, so Toru asks her if doing his job wouldn't be too difficult, but Shizuku tells him she can pick it up quickly. Shortly after, Shizuku gives him a demonstration and puts some food in the microwave. Moments later, she returns with a pizza with a white bread crust, and Toru realizes it looks exactly like the one he made before. It's also delicious, so Shizuku explains that their ability to mimic comes from them having great memories, which also lets her copy his mannerisms. Toru figures that she may be able to do it, and he guesses this might give him more time to explore the dungeon too. He tells Shizuku to come check out his workplace in that case, but he doesn't know where to keep her since she's grown bigger. She asks if she can go out looking like Rhea, but he says only staff are allowed inside the place they're going. Because of that, Shizuku suggests turning into clothing, and he'd wear her. She says that she can cover his body, and then turn into clothes, but he would have to take off his clothes first. Shizuku decides to give it a shot, and Shizuku does with great embarrassment even though she's just a slime. When he's naked, she covers him up and turns into great-looking clothing, even though he feels like he's covered in jelly. Suddenly he feels her rub against his little Johnny, and tells her to stop. Shizuku apologizes because her Johnny looked so cute, but he tells her not to call it cute. She soon laments that it's gotten bigger, even though it was cute a moment ago, but it's now scary. He tells her to shut up, and he considers wearing some underwear. When he gets out, Shizuku is amazed by how the outside world looks. Toru decides to give her a little tour, so he shows her cars, and she says she saw them in her books. Toru cringes because he knows the cars in his books weren't for transportation. He also shows her the sidewalk, the traffic lights, and they soon reach his workplace, a cafe restaurant called Guanadia. When he steps in, a lady welcomes Turo, but refers to him as Suzuki. Turo greets the lady named Kuno, and he apologizes for taking the time off, but she says it's fine since he was moving. She asks him about his new apartment, and the rumors about it being haunted, so he jokes that it's not and it's just boring. She asks him what he's doing on his last day off, so he tells her he came to clean up his locker. When he's going in, he asks her who's working the kitchen today, and he's told his boss is doing that. Toru steps into the staff area, and he finds his boss who asks him if he's resuming tomorrow. Toru says he is, so his boss expresses his relief because he'd heard some rumors about his new place and that he might not be coming back. Toru jokes that it's a normal apartment, and he realizes that it's going to be hard to teach Shizuku how to cook since someone is around. Because of that, Toru suggests that he helps his boss cover the kitchen for an hour, and his boss thanks him for that. Toru heads to the changing room and shows Shizuku his chef clothing so she can transform into it. He soon lets his boss take a break, and his boss says he'll be back in around half an hour. Toru decides to teach Shizuku the most common orders, and shows her where the instructions are written. To his surprise, she says she's memorized all of them on the spot, and Kuno soon rushes in to inform Toru that one of the late-night teen groups just came in. Toru expresses his annoyance because the late-night teen groups are usually big, so they order a ton of food and want it right away, which is a pain. Toru asks where the boss is, but Kuno tells him he's gone out, and Toru starts to reconsider his offer because he's not getting paid for running this hour. While he thinks, Shizuku tells him she'll do it, and she starts to move his body despite his protest like in Ratatouille. He watches as she makes all the orders, and he realizes she did memorize all the recipes. He tells her she's amazing, and he realizes he can count on her in the future to handle this. Later on, Toru gets back home at 5 in the morning because of how busy the shift was. He realizes he'll have to get back to work by 8, even though he's not slept. Shizuku offers to cover for him on his first shift and let him stay with Ria, but Toru refuses because he still has to do his own work. When he goes to bed, Shizuku asks if she can also sleep with him, so he tells her she can as long as she doesn't let Ria see her. Hours later, Toru wakes up and he realizes it's 10 o'clock. He jumps up and wonders how he missed his 7 o'clock alarm. Then he finds out that the 10 o'clock alarm has a message from Shizuku for him to rest well. He realizes she must have gone to his workplace, so Toru goes to the living room and finds Ria having a drink. She greets him and asks if he was feeling well. He wonders what she means, so she tells him he was up a few hours ago, but he said he wasn't feeling well and was going back to sleep. Toru realizes that was Shizuku, so he tells her he's better and asks if she's had breakfast. She tells him she has and reminds him that he made her a sandwich, and Toru realizes that must be Shizuku again. Toru tells Ria that he'll have to go to a mage conference, so he'll be teleporting again, so she wishes him a safe trip. Toru heads out to the restaurant but wears things to cover his face. He starts to fidget, but the waitress that's on shift asks him if he wants a table. He recognizes her as Tachiishi, a high schooler who's very reserved. He tells her he wants a table, so she leads him to a table in the back. After he places his order, Toru looks around and notices no one is panicking, which means Shizuku is serving the customers properly. When his food arrives, he realizes it was cooked properly, but when he tastes it, he summons the waitress and asks her to call the chef. Tachishi becomes confused, so Toru clenches his fist and forcefully tells her he wants to appreciate the chef because this was delicious. Alarmed, she rushes to get him. Shizuku soon shows up with a smile but starts to panic when she realizes it's her master. Toru tells her that this mixed grill combo is delicious, and he tells her he'll be waiting for her in the bathroom. Scared, Shizuku follows him, so when they get into a stall, Toru asks her what she's doing. Shizuku starts to cry and apologizes that no one noticed anything. Toru tells her that's not the problem, and says he'll be taking over from here. She asks him if he's upset, so he tells her he's not because he knows she did it to help him out, but they have to switch back. He gives her his face covers, and tells her he'll leave first and she can leave after him. He tells her to eat the leftover grill platter, and remember to make lunch for Ria when she gets home. Hours later, Toru finally heads home after his exhausting shift. When he gets close to him, he realizes that there'll be 2 of him if he goes in like this again. So he sneaks in but notices that his doormat is squishy. Immediately, Ria finds him and tells him he's way too good at the game because she didn't know where he was hiding. Toru realizes Shizuku must have been playing hide-and-seek with Ria. Ria soon tells him it's her turn to hide, but he asks her if they can take a break because he's a bit tired. When he settles down, Shizuku appears again and apologizes to him for doing that without asking him first. He tells her it's fine, but they'll only do it for emergencies from now on. He asks her why she did it, so Shizuku tells him that her friends told her that humans would make them for them, but he's only been feeding her. Toru pats her on the head and realizes that Shizuku still has faith in humanity after other white slimes have lost faith in humans. He tells her he'll do his own work, but he'll ask her to do things he can't do. The next morning, Toru wakes up when his 2 a.m. alarm rings and tries to sneak out of bed, but Shizuku asks him where he's going. Toru is surprised she saw him, but he tells her not to shout because he's going into the dungeon to level up a bit. Shizuku asks him to be careful, and when Toru enters the dungeon, he's shocked to see several slimes everywhere. He realizes this must have happened because of the blue slime he left in the Tupperware, so he gets his pickaxe and runs towards them to level up. After taking them all down, he starts to panic when he realizes that he can't raise any more of them to keep so he can raise his experience points later. He's been able to level up quite well just from fighting these ones. Even though he's getting stronger, he wants to find a way to gain more levels, so he decides to find another baby slime to raise, which means he'll have to go through the door Ria closed to escape from monsters. He remembers that Ria told him that there are other doors like this in the dungeon that can be closed to create safe areas, and she had said that other adventurers camp in these areas. He realizes he'd have to open this door to get a new monster, but he decides to just quickly peep in case it's dangerous. After clicking the button on the wall, the door opens, but he's shocked to realize there's a wall behind the door. He remembers that Ria said this is where she came from, and he knows she isn't lying to him. He also remembers that Ria saw a stone wall on the other side of his apartment window, which she couldn't go through, so this could be the same thing. Suddenly, he hears a sound, so he rushes out to close the door, but a hand reaches out to him from beyond the wall. Before he can close the door, a mage launches at him from behind the wall and knocks him down. He's shocked at the sight of a real mage, and he recognizes her black witch's hat and black wooden staff, so he figures she must be a mage. The lady tells him to quickly close the door because a giant centipede is coming, so Toru rushes to do that. The door starts to slowly close, but the centipede brings out its head before the door can close, shocking Toru. He realizes the monster is too big for him to beat, but the door slams down on the centipede, and it becomes trapped in the entrance. Toru tries to use his pickaxe to finish off the monster, but the witch tells him it won't, so she tells him to get out of the way as she blasts the monster with fire. The fire covers the monster, and burns it till it collapses on the spot. Toru is shocked by this, and he notices that the witch has collapsed. He rushes to her side to check on her, but she tells him to look behind him. When he looks, he notices the burnt centipede trying to attack him, so Toru blindly swings and lands his pickaxe into its head. His attack knocks it down, but he knows he was just lucky. When he takes down the centipede, he suddenly levels up. After that, he goes to check on the girl, so she tells him that the giant centipede poisoned him. She tells him the centipede's poison is deadly, and she can be saved if he has any high-level healing magic, but she's hopeless without it. Toru quickly looks through his bag, and he brings out some cola because he hopes it will work for her poison too. Because she's weak, she's unable to drink it, so he drinks it himself and pours it into her mouth from his mouth. He asks her if it worked, and shortly after she starts to cough. Moments later she recovers, and she can't believe what's happening. Toru tells her he gave her a cure and he offers her some more. She drinks more of it and realizes it's counteracting the poison. Surprised, she asks him if it's a potion, because she's never seen such a fast-acting antidote. Toru is relieved she's better, and he offers to take her to a safe place to recuperate if she wants. She stares at him suspiciously, then tells him he should just hurry up to assault her if that's what he's planning, but Toru wonders what she's talking about. The lady tells him he must be a fugitive since he's living down here, and mentions his strange appearance. Since she doesn't have anything he might want, she points out that he must have saved her for her body, and Toru screams in shock. He tells her that's not it, and he explains that he only kissed her to give her the potion. He soon starts to panic as he realizes he's had his first kiss, and he starts to apologize to Ria, then starts to wonder why he's apologizing to her. This surprises the lady, so she asks him if he's really not going to attack her, and adds that she can't trust such a strange-looking person living so deep in the dungeon. Toru insists he's not like that, so she asks him who he is. So he says he's a mage who has grown weary of all the problems in the above world, so he's decided to stay here alone. The lady is initially skeptical, so she asks him to help her walk to the safe place he said he'll take her to. While he carries her, the lady apologizes for treating him with suspicion even though he saved her life. Toru tells her not to worry about it, and the lady realizes he's a decent person. Toru tells her they're almost at his place, and tells her it's just beyond the strange-looking door. However, the lady doesn't see any door, and says she can only see a wall. Confused, Toru tries to open the door, but she tells him all she can see is a wall. Toru wonders how he was able to take Ria through the door, and he wonders how he did it. The lady wonders if he's trying to deceive her, and tells him to let go, but Toru pulls the both of them through the door, and they appear in his room. The lady wonders what just happened, so he realizes the lady is able to pass through it as long as she's touching him. He realizes that physical contact seems to be the key, so he figures that may work for the other walls as well. Soon after, Shizuku comes to welcome Toru back, and he asks who this lady is. The lady is shocked to see a white slime, so Toru explains to Shizuku that this is a mage who collapsed after being poisoned, so he asks Shizuku to help her remove her boots. After that, he takes her into the tatami room and asks her how she's feeling. She tells him she's fine, but she's just very surprised about everything she's seeing. She asks him if he's actually a mage, and slyly tells him that he's piqued her interest. When she suddenly starts to undress, Toru realizes this mage is actually freaking hot. When he sees her ears, he asks her if she's an elf, so she says she's a high elf and asks him if he hadn't noticed. He tells her he's never seen an elf before, and that surprises her because humans are big fans of elves. She soon comes close and hugs Toru, pushing him to the ground. She explains that she's not someone who likes to be in debt, so she tells him she has nothing to repay him with right now, and she's interested in him. Because of that, she tells him she offers to repay him with her body, but Toru just screams. Confused, she asks if he doesn't want her, but he tells her that's not the problem, but points out that Shizuku is watching. Meanwhile, Shizuku asks Toru if the both of them are going to do the stuff she saw in his forbidden tomes, so she says she'll just blend into the mat, and he doesn't have to mind her. Meanwhile, Toru realizes that the elf's jugs are amazing up front, and he realizes they're even bigger than Ria's. As he tries to snap out of it, Ria enters the room and asks Toru what he's doing up at this hour. The mage is surprised to see Ria, and Toru tries to tell Ria that this isn't what it looks like. Immediately, Ria recognizes the lady as Diet, the solitary mage. Diet also recognizes Ria as Arya, the meddling knight. Our boy just lays there confused about what's going on. Later, Toru and both ladies sit down and there's an awkward silence. Eventually, he breaks the ice by pointing out that they seem to know each other, and Rhea says they do, but Dictate says they don't. This shocks Rhea, so she asks Dictate how she could say that when she's invited her to join an adventuring party so many times. Dictate reminds her that she always refused because Rhea is always butting in where she's not needed, just like she did in the other room. Annoyed, Rhea asks Date what she was doing to Toru in the other room, but Date jokes that humans are always doing that sort of thing. Date asks if she and the Great Mage haven't done it yet, and points out Rhea's jealousy, but Rhea tells her that's none of her business. While they're arguing, Toru tries to calm them down, and he tells Date to feel free to use the bed since she's still recovering. He says that he and Rhea will sleep in the tatami room, and that makes Rhea happy, but Date says she doesn't like it. Date asks Rhea if she still calls herself a knight by suggesting they take the best bunk from the mage, so she suggests the two of them take the other room. That night, Toru sleeps alone, and he realizes this is the first time he's slept alone. When he turns to his side, he's shocked to see Date, and he asks her what she's doing here, instead of sleeping in the room with Rhea. Date signals to him not to make a fuss, and she explains that Rhea is already sleeping because she falls asleep quickly. She mentions that she heard him thinking out loud that he's not a mage, so he admits that he's not actually a great mage, and he apologizes for deceiving her. However, she insists that him being a mage or not doesn't change the fact that he saved her life. She says this is the reason she felt it would be alright if he's the one. He wonders what she means, so she tells him one of his secrets because he told her his. She explains that she's never done the deed, and that surprises Toru because of how she dresses. Date argues that it's not her fault, and says that elves have a low urge to reproduce because they have long lifespans. She pleads with him not to tell Rhea, and he agrees not to. Later, she tells him his room is full of things that she as a high elf has never seen before, so she asks him what kind of room this is. He soon tells her the whole thing, so she learns that they're in another world, which surprises her. Toru also admits he didn't know there's another world beyond his. Date also asks him why he speaks the monster tongue, and mentions that it was part of the reason she didn't trust him. Toru explains that it seems his country's language resembles the monster tongue of her world, and she finds that an interesting coincidence. Toru also wonders if there's a link between Japan and the monsters of the other world, so he asks Date why she and Rhea know the monster tongue. Date explains that goblins, orcs, or other intelligent creatures sometimes communicate while they attack. Apparently, it's easier to fight them when you understand them, so every serious adventurer learns a bit of the monster tongue, even though the reading and writing is more difficult. Toru is intrigued by that and also asks why he can understand them, especially because their language is unknown to him, but he can hear the meaning inside his head. She explains that it's the common tongue skill that allows them to send the meaning of their words via telepathy, which is very convenient when interacting with other races or when traveling. While Toru thinks about that, Dank grabs a hold of him again, and he becomes tense as he wonders if she's trying to repay him again like before. She tells him she'd like to see his world, so he pulls her through the wall of the window after she changes her clothes. Date is surprised she can pass through the wall as long as she's touching him. He gives her a cap to cover her elf ears so she doesn't draw attention, and he tells her not to speak too much because they don't have telepathy there either. When she gets into the street, she is amazed by the view and the sight of cars. She's almost hit by a car, so Toru drags her away when she becomes scared. Later, he takes her to a nearby store so they can look around. Once inside, she complains that all the blinky things that are being put on sale are making her dizzy because of how bright they are. Because of that, he takes her out so she can take a break. He asks her to wait a moment, and goes to order a banana chocolate whipped cream crepe. But when he comes back, he sees two boys trying to riz Date. She glares at them, so Toru comes to tell them she's a foreigner and can't speak Japanese, and he asks the men if they need something. When the men realize she's with someone, they decide to leave, so Date angrily asks Toru why the men would just approach her like that. Toru gives her the crepe and tells her to eat it, and her eyes light up when she tastes it. She really enjoys it and keeps eating, then soon apologizes to Toru when she realizes she's eating it, when he only bought one. However, Toru just wipes the side of her mouth, and he tells her to eat the rest of it, since she likes it so much. DeVriend accuses him of laughing at her, so he jokingly apologizes and says she looks like she was enjoying it. She hands him the crepe and says it's not that good, so she's done. So Toru attempts to eat it, but he notices her staring at his mouth. He eventually says he's not that hungry and suggests they share the rest, which excites her. Later, they check out the store again, and DeVriend sees all the clothes that Rhea was wearing. She realizes that all the clothes there are inappropriate and accuses him of making Rhea wear fetish gear, and calls him a pervert. However, Toru tries to defend himself that the food and the clothing from Japan seem to have special effects in the dungeon. That surprises her, so he admits that he hasn't confirmed the one about the clothes, but he knows the food boosts stats. Because of that, Date takes a look at the clothes and wonders if they can really increase her stats. Toru tells her that Rhea is still unsure about going back to the dungeon, but they can get a few outfits for her so she can try them, and he tells her it'll look good on her. Shortly after, she packs a few costumes and they head home. While they're going, she admits that Japan is amazing, and they have such great things. When they get back home, they find Rhea still sleeping, and they realize she's a deep sleeper. Later, Toru asks Date if he hopes she doesn't hate Rhea, so Date says her pushiness is annoying but he's not all that bad. Because of that, Toru suggests she tries to stop provoking her, and they try to get along, but Date says she doesn't see the need. Toru reminds her that they're going to be staying together, so Date says she'll think about it. Toru suddenly remembers Ria saying that Date never joins adventuring parties, so he wonders why she always goes into the dungeon alone. Eventually she asks him if she can sleep with him tonight, so he reminds her of her agreement to sleep in the tatami room, so she reluctantly agrees. The next morning, Ria comes to wake Toru up, but he complains that it's too early, and he doesn't have a shift that morning. She insists that it's bad for his health to oversleep, so she pushes him to the restroom to freshen up and asks him to come to the table when he's done. While inside, Toru is surprised to see Date brushing her teeth and admits to Date that he now sees why she calls Ria the meddling knight. When they get to the table, Toru and Date are shocked at the creature that Ria put on their plate. When they ask what it is, she says she tried her best to copy what Toru did before and make breakfast. Date blames Ria for making them get up early, knowing they'd be hungry just to serve them this. When she asks if they wronged her, Ria apologizes, so Toru calms them down and decides to take care of it. He gives them some cereal, and it surprises them how quickly it was prepared, and they enjoy its taste. After breakfast, they unpack the rest of the moving boxes and begin to arrange them. When Toru shows Ria what to do, he goes to set up his computer, and Date asks him what it is. He tells her it's a computer, and he sets it up in front of her. She asks him what they do with this, so he tells her they can do many things including surfing the internet. She supposes that the character lives inside the monitor, so he tells her that she can use the computer to also research and see things around the world. He also mentions that he feels like they might be able to use this to keep an eye on the dungeon, which surprises her. He realizes that he'll need a lot of money to buy equipment, so he asks Date if she can show him the money from the other world. She soon heads out and returns with a bag of money, so he reminds her that she said she didn't have anything of value on her. Date tells him she was lying because there's no reason she'd tell the truth to a random stranger. Toru agrees and he notices the money is made of gold, so he makes a request to Date. He asks her if he can use some of these coins to buy the things he needs in her world, so she asks him if he can really use the coins from her world. He says he knows a way, so she tells him to take as many as he likes, and she thanks him for the clothes he gave her. After he takes some of the coins, he asks Date if she'd like to use the bath, and she's surprised to hear he has one. They head out, so Toru asks Ria to help Date take a bath. Date immediately insists she can do it herself, but Ria shoves her there so she can show her how to use it. Toru did that because he knew Up would want to follow him if he said he was going out, and that would leave Ria on her own. He soon heads out and he is offered 106,400 yen for the 2 coins. The largest one seems to have a platinum gold plating, but he's told they can't make an offer without doing further research. She tells him to get paid for the 2 and let them analyze the 3rd one for a later time, but Toru asks to just get paid for the 2 alone. When he leaves, he's surprised that it was worth so much, and he knew he couldn't let them research the 3rd so he doesn't get into trouble. He knows it'd be suspicious if he did this too often, so that means he can't quit his job just yet. That night, Toru heads back into the dungeon with Date to learn more about their world after Ria fell asleep. When Toru checks his stats again, he's surprised to see he's increased by a level after killing the centipede. Date asks to see his status, and she's surprised that he's 21, which she considers young. When he asks her what her age is, she says she'll tell him later, and she also notices he doesn't have a job in his status. She's surprised to see that he has the no-level cap skill at level 4, so Toru tells her he's always had it and asks what it means. She tells him it's one of the best, and confesses she'd give anything for that skill. However, she adds that human lifespans are so short and can't reach their level cap before they die, unlike elves who have long lifespans and can safely take their time to grind levels. She points out that a giant centipede isn't something a low-level adventurer can defeat, so Toru tells her he got lucky when he swung at it. Pusette tells him that the job listing on his status is a representation of his character class, and not having a job means that he doesn't have any particular inclination towards certain skills. However, this also means that he's not restricted when it comes to gaining skills. He can learn magic, attack, or even support skills, but it's going to require more training and leveling up for him than someone with an appropriate job. After that, Toru asks her to check her stats, so he asks her to take her cloak off to be sure she's wearing it. She reluctantly removes her cloak and unveils one of the costumes he got her, and gets angry when the sight excites Toru. She wonders if this will actually boost her status, but she's shocked to see that her defense has increased by 200 points and her level cap has increased. Toru runs to check and learns she's 221 years old, which shocks him. She protests that elves live to be 1,000 years old, so it's like 20 in human years. Toru notices she's 1 level away from her level cap, so she tells him she was actually at the max level for a while, but it just increased after she wore this. She's surprised that such a flimsy outfit has such a high defense score. She guesses the knickers have an amazing effect as well, so she decides to change so they can confirm. That surprises Toru, but he decides to turn around so she can change. While she's changing, she surprisingly finds out that her level cap remained the same after she took off the swimsuit, which means the level cap was from something else. She wonders if it was affected by the no-level cap skill, but she wonders what could have caused that. Suddenly she gets an idea and comes close to Toru, which startles him. Suddenly she kisses him, and Toru asks her why she suddenly did that. However, she starts to rejoice because it worked, but Toru just asks her to put on some clothes. She doesn't initially realize she's unclad, and quickly turns back to wear clothes. Later she explains to him that when they kissed just now, her level cap increased again. Apparently it's gone to 49, which means that her no-level cap skill seems to transfer to her whenever they kiss. That surprises Toru, so she says it might also be because of some other skill he has, but they can't be sure of that without the high-level appraise person skill. While Toru thinks about it, Da tries to kiss him again, but he stops her. She explains that she can't raise her level cap without him, and asks him if he knows how many decades she's been stuck at max level, forcing her to keep killing monsters without getting stronger. Regardless of her sob story, Toru tells her this isn't something they should do frivolously. Deet tells him she wouldn't do this with someone she didn't like just to raise her level cap, but she's willing to do it because he's the one. Toru still hesitates, so Deet says he's thinking about Ria. He laments that he likes Ria more than her, so he tries to tell her that's not it because he's just as interested in her too. That startles Deet, so she asks him if that's true, so Toru apologizes for saying that. Eventually she tells him he can choose Ria first, but she asks him if he'll be with her in 80 years when Ria has kicked the bucket. Confused, Toru reminds her that he'll also be gone in 80 years, so she gloomily tells him there's a way to extend his lifespan. Surprised, Toru asks her how, so she tells him he'd have to become the dungeon master. In a flashback to when Toru went to the store, Ria suggests that she and Diget bathe together. Diget protests that she can do it herself, but Ria says she might make a mistake just like she did in her first time. After they undress, Ria shows Diget that the tub produces as much hot water as she wants, and there are plenty of different soaps available. That amazes Diget. So Ria asks Diget to call her Ria, which is more informal instead of Arya, but Diget refuses. Later Deet decides to try out the tub, but Ria blocks her and says she'll let her use it if she calls her Ria, but Deet still refuses. When she becomes frustrated, Ria blasts her with cold water. Ria eventually pours hot water on her own body and says Master Turos artifacts are so amazing because they can turn cold water to hot in an instant. Deet gets frustrated and asks her to let her in the tub, but Ria tells her to accept her request. Deet asks her why she's so particular about this, so Ria says she wants them to be friends since they're going to be living together. So Deet remembers what Toru told her the night before. She eventually concedes and calls her Ria, so Ria excitedly says they'll bathe together. In the present, Toru works during his shift, and he thinks about how things have gotten more difficult. In a flashback to last night, Deet tells him about becoming a dungeon master, which allows him to run the dungeon. However, he can't attain the dungeon master skill by leveling up, but must go deep into the dungeon and get the title from the current master. He asks her what that has to do with him living longer, so she says there's a rumor that dungeon masters don't age. Toru asks if they're immortal, so she says they can be killed. She says this labyrinth of darkness must have a master, and he must ask for the title, and if the master refuses, he must defeat them. But to reach the deepest floor and defeat the current master, he'll have to really increase his level. But he'll also have to defeat a lot of monsters before he's too old. But she adds that it's not realistic though, because it took her over 100 years to reach her current level. Toru gets an idea, and says there's an idea he has about monster breeding. She finds it interesting, and admits that she's never thought about breeding monsters to use them to level up. Toru says he can check on their growth from his computer and defeat them with traps after breeding them. Toru finds the idea amazing, but she becomes angry when she realizes that it would mean that she wasted 200 years, and so much blood and sweat instead of just doing this. Eventually, Toru tells her not aging at all is kind of scary, so when she asks him why, he says that the idea of living too long feels weird to a human. She reminds him he can be with her forever, and they'll travel all over both worlds together. She says it'll be perfect, but Toru reluctantly admits it will be not to piss her off. Toru also mentions that he's a bit worried about managing a dungeon, especially because of the idea of monsters in his dungeon killing people. However, she tells him that adventurers must defeat monsters to make a living, and it goes both ways. She says he can also choose not to spawn any monsters, or he can pass the skill to someone else, so Toru agrees. That motivates him, so he decides to become the dungeon master. In the present, he remembers how enthusiastic he was, but he now realizes he's still a nobody. He thinks about his current life, but he's suddenly pulled out of his thoughts by Tachishi, who shouts his name. She tells him the food in the oven is done, and she has more work for him. Toru apologizes, and quickly gets the food out, so Tachishi thanks him but notices something odd. When Toru gets back home, the ladies welcome him back, and he tells them he brought some food. When Deet laments that she's starving, he gives them a hamburger, and when they taste it, the ladies are very pleased. While they're eating, Toru goes to the shelf to give Shizuku a hamburger as well. When she eats it, she says it's wonderful. Suddenly, Deet enters and asks Toru why he keeps Shizuku hidden from Ria. He explains that he saved Ria from the dungeon after she collapsed, and she was afraid of monsters, so he doesn't know what she'd think about Shizuku. Deet finds it strange that Ria was separated from the party, was alone and had lost her sword. They suddenly hear a sound, so Ria rushes in to ask what the sound is. Toru heads out and he picks up the call. What he hears over the phone shocks him, so he asks the two of them to hide because a dark sorcerer has come calling. Ria is shocked to hear of a dark sorcerer, but Toru tells them they have to hide. But the person at the door tells Toru that he's here about his TV contract. Surprised to hear about a contract, Ria asks him if it's about black magic, and asks him if he'll be alright by himself. He tells her he'll be fine since he's a great mage, and asks them to hide. Ria soon grabs Deet and drags her out of the room. Toru realizes he had to deal with this quickly, so the man doesn't come back. When he opens the door, the man introduces himself as Anami, and says he's from NNK. The man asks him if he just moved here and says it looks like he doesn't have a TV license fee contract. He tells the man he doesn't have a contract because he doesn't have a TV, since the internet is enough for him. The man is surprised that he doesn't have a TV in such an amazing apartment, so he decides to let himself in, much to Toru's surprise. The man suggests he looks around since he doesn't have a TV, but Toru tells him he can't just walk into someone's house like this. He realizes the man is strong and he's still pushing past him even though he's increased his strength. However, Ria suddenly comes out and pushes the man away for assaulting Master Toru. Her push launches him into the door, and Toru asks Ria why she came out. Toru realizes that Ria's freakishly strong because she's a knight, and the man soon gets up after nursing his pain. When he's up, he admits that Ria has quite an arm because she surprised him even though he does sumo wrestling. He eventually grabs Toru because it's suspicious that he tried to keep him out and accuses him of having a TV. Toru tells him they don't, so Deet comes out to zap the man with a stun shock magic. The shock knocks the man down, so she assures Toru that it doesn't have any lasting damage, but it's just to prevent him from moving. They're shocked when the man soon gets back up and says he got hit by a static shock that came out of nowhere. Toru wonders if this guy is even human, but the guy grabs him again and says he needs to check if he has a TV. When Toru realizes he won't give up, he allows him to come in and check so the ladies don't kill him. After looking around, the man admits he doesn't see anything, so he decides to check the closet too. However, Toru stops him because that's where he keeps his forbidden tomes. The man insists he knows there's a TV in the closet, so Toru whispers to the man to explain what's there. The man's a nut job, and loudly tells Toru that everyone has some of that. Toru is shocked that he blurted it out, so he shoves the ladies out of the room. Ria protests that the dark sorcerer could be after his forbidden texts, but Deet wonders what forbidden text she's talking about. However, Toru just tells the ladies to let the guy go through the closet. After the man checks the closet, he's filled with gloom and admits that Toru doesn't have a TV. He eventually heads out, but he tells Toru he'll be back because he's not giving up. Toru just tells him to be sure he's home when he comes because he's worried the girls will mess him up. Toru is relieved when the guy leaves, but when he enters the closet he finds Deet reading his forbidden text, which shocks him. She quickly starts packing them, and tells him to hide these better because Ria wouldn't approve, so he starts to stutter. However, she asks him if she can read them sometime, so she can learn what he likes, and Toru almost loses his mind thinking about doing the things in the book with Deet. Suddenly Toru realizes that Enemy didn't leave through the window, but he left through the front door. Meanwhile, Enemy appears in the dungeon and becomes worried about losing another contract. He suddenly realizes he doesn't know where he is and can't see anything. He tries to find his way out, and he eventually finds the door that Toru shut, so he clicks the switch to close it. Suddenly someone appears to Anami from beyond the wall and tells him there's a room over that way. Toru and the ladies appear behind Anami to try to save him, but Anami grabs the monster that appeared to him to ask him if he has a TV contract. The monster wonders what on earth he's talking about, but Anami soon follows him into the dungeon. Toru says they have to go get him because he could probably defeat a slime, but a giant centipede would be a problem. Deet tells him he can't go in because Ria doesn't have her sword and his level is too low. She offers to go on her own, which surprises Toru. She says she wanted to make a trip to the surface anyway, and there are things she needs to take care of there, especially since they need more gold coins. She also says she'll look for Anami. The others become worried, but she tells them not to be because she'll be back before they know it. Eventually they concede, so they hurry back so Deet can wear her gear and take some food and water. Before she leaves, she assures them she'll take care of Anami, so she asks him to keep an eye on the iron door with his computer. When she leaves, they lock the door, and Ria says she hopes Deet comes back soon and Anami is safe. 1 week after Deet returns to the dungeon, Toru gets a delivery. He asks the delivery man to open the door because his hands are full, and he did that because he's learned that opening the door from the inside will lead to the dungeon. After he receives the package, Ria asks him what it is, so he tells her it's a special artifact, and brings out a camera. He asks her to help him remodel the dungeon, so he sets up the equipment. After he sets up the monitor, he asks Ria to look at the monitor. Then he walks away and points the camera at his face. Ria is shocked to see him appearing on the monitor, and she's surprised that there's two of him. After he's confirmed it works, Toru realizes there's the problem of how the cable will enter the dungeon. He can't drill holes, and he can't leave the door open, so he realizes he has to use an air conditioner hole since it faces the front door. After he passes the cable by the AC hole, he heads into the dungeon but doesn't find the cable there. He wonders if he bought all the equipment for nothing, but he soon gets an idea. He recalls that the door connects both to the dungeon and the hallway, so he wonders which it is connected to when it's closed. He remembers that he could hear a nami when the door was closed, so he suspects that it's connected to the hallway. So he decides to keep the door open so it's connected to the dungeon while he passes the cable. He checks again and finds the cable, so he connects it to the camera, and it finally works. He's able to see the dungeon on the monitor, and he rejoices with Ria. Toru eventually set up the cameras to watch his door, the main room and the iron door. Ria is excited they can check the door from here, and she's amazed at such magic that can allow them to see far. She tells Toru he's an incredible mage, and he smiles uncomfortably. He decides to show her something more amazing, so he brings out a robot arm, which he refers to as the key to his dungeon remodel. He tells Ria that he's going to put the robot arm next to the iron door, so he can use it to open the iron door from his computer. Toru eventually sets it up, but it took several hours because he's very new to programming and had to do research. While Ria is asleep, he tests it out and the door opens. He recalls that the iron door crushed the centipede but didn't kill it, so he hopes he can use it to kill weaker monsters. Suddenly, he spots a slime, so he slams the door on it. Sometime later, Toru realizes his method isn't working so well because he was unable to smash the other slimes with the door because it came down too slowly. He heads into the dungeon to deal with the slimes himself, and he notices them chomping on the giant centipede corpse. They had already devoured it before he got there, so he decides to find more bait, and he's also worried he won't gain many levels by just killing slimes. He wonders what other monsters would prefer, and won't know as bait, so he goes to the store. He takes Shizuku with him, who is disguised as his shirt, and she loves how big and sparkly the Don Quixote store is. While they walk through the aisle, Toru asks Shizuku to tell him if she sees anything that looks good. Toru figures that monsters must like meat since they eat people, but he also decides to get several other types of food just in case. Akira asks Shizuku if she'd like him to buy something for her, so she asks for a collar. Toru finds it awkward and wonders how she'd wear one as a slime, so Shizuku says she'll wear it in human form, and mentions that receiving a collar is a sign of love according to his forbidden books. Toru's idea of a collar brings pets to his mind, so he gets another idea about something to buy as bait. He returns home with some meat, veggies, and cat food. While he pours it at the entrance, Shizuku says it smells good, and asks what it is. Toru soon heads back in and opens the door, and immediately a giant centipede, some weird-looking mushrooms, giant rats, and tons of slimes show up. It's clear they like the pet food, so Toru slams the door on them. After that, he notices he's gained 2 levels, but he suddenly notices that he's gotten a skill called Appraisal Level 1. He recalls that Dee told him that having no class will let him learn different skills, so he wonders if Appraisal will allow him to see other people's stats. He hopes that he may be able to take down a centipede with one blow if he keeps gaining levels, so he goes to replenish the baits and gain more levels. When he comes back to his seat, his 5:30 a.m. alarm rings, and he realizes it's late. He decides to get some sleep because he has to be at work at 9 a.m., but he decides to do it one more time. However, this time, the monsters run away, so he doesn't get them. He keeps trying one more time until he appears at work looking like a zombie the next morning. He stayed up all night, but he leveled up more. Tachishi soon comes to hasten him, so Toru wishes he could gain levels while he's stuck at work. He remembers back when he used to play MMORPGs and how he used to use software to automatically click. When he gets back home, he finds several bots like that, and he recalls that people use bots to level up and collect items. This is considered cheating in games, but this is in real life. Ria comes to ask him what he's doing, so he tells her he's making the iron door open and close. She asks him why he's doing that, so he tells her about his elaborate trap. She's surprised that he did all that, and asks him why a great mage who should already be close to his max level needs to do all that. He lies that he likes trying new things and says that it can help reduce the number of monsters, and Ria finds him considerate. Toru decides to set the door to open every 20 minutes and close 2 minutes later. When he gets tired, Ria offers to watch the monitor. Toru worries that she'll be bored, but she tells him that she's interested in seeing his artifacts. He soon decides to let her track the monsters that get defeated, so he goes to bed. Suddenly, he hears Ria shouting, so he wakes up and asks what's wrong. She tells him that the Dark Sorcerer has appeared on the monitor, referring to Anami. Ria says the Dark Sorcerer has appeared with an orc, and Toru is shocked when he sees it for himself. They notice that Anami's clothing has changed, and he's eating pet food with the orc, but they soon realize the iron door is closing. Toru panics and clicks the door to temporarily send it back, so he rushes into the dungeon to save Anami. He rushes in with Ria behind him, and he calls out to Anami, who asks him if he's gotten a TV so he can set him up with a contract. However, Toru tells him he needs to run, so Anami asks him why. Toru tells Anami to look up at the iron door, but Anami thinks he's about to trick him to steal the delicious food. Toru tells Anami the pet food is bad, so Anami looks up and sees that the door is about to crush them. He quickly tells the orc, who he calls Dono, that they need to fall back because the food is bad, so the orc takes his word for it. They rush back in, and Toru first rejoices that Anami got away, but he soon begins to panic when he realizes he went back into the dungeon. He He tries to open the door to catch up to him and he stretches out his hand so he can enter since Rhea is with him. When Rhea tries to grab his hand, she trips and starts to tremble. Much to her surprise, suddenly Deet shows up and asks them what they're doing here. Toru asks her if she just passed Inami. She doesn't initially remember, but when Toro shouts, she tells him she didn't forget. She tells them about a rumor at the guild, but she suggests they head in and continue their conversation. After she has some cola, she tells them about when she went to the Adventurers Guild Tavern, and she heard that a strange orc kept asking about license fee contracts, which sounds like the license fee contract Inami is always asking for. Toru asks what the Adventurers Guild is, so Dewit tells him that the Labyrinth of Darkness is controlled by the Adventurers Guild that's backed by the Kingdom of Francis, and each guild also runs a tavern. Apparently the guild put out a hunting quest for Inami. Toru is terrified that they'll kill him, so Dewit tells him it looks like it, but the reward put out for him is just a ranky reward. However, she says that orcs are pretty strong and she doesn't think anyone will kill one for just a ranky reward. Toru is relieved, but she says that a stronger adventurer can still want the reward as a bonus. So Toru asks if there's no way to save him. Date says he can submit a new quest, offering a higher reward, and asks that he be brought in alive. She suggests he speak to whoever set up the other quest, because it shouldn't be an issue since they also want Inami gone. Toru asks Date to go back to the guild and put it up, but that annoys her since she just returned. Toru agrees that it's a pain, but he tells her they can't just leave Inami there. Eventually Date suggests he goes with her, but Toru gets worried that it might be dangerous. Date reminds him he's gained some levels, and she tells him she and Rhea would be with him. Rhea is startled to hear she'll be going too, so she says that she doesn't have a sword and she'll just be a burden, but Date brings out a wrapped object which she says she bought for Rhea. When she unveils it, it turns out to be a sword that would fit her, but Rhea protests that she can't accept it. Regardless, Date asks her to take it since she can't return to the surface without a sword, so Rhea has no choice but to accept the gift. Rhea thanks Date for the gift and says she'll pay her back, but Date asks her not to worry about it. Excited, Toru suggests they all go into the dungeon tomorrow or the day after. Since that's settled, he heads back to gain more levels, and Date asks him if he set up the level-gaining trap he spoke about, so he decides to show her. He shows her the cameras he set up and the robotic arm he added to open the door, as well as the bait. He opens the door, and when a centipede appears, he crushes it with the door and gains another level. Date is surprised that he gained another level while doing it, so he also tells her he can set this up so he can do it while he sleeps, but he can't do it while Inami is out there. She demands to know what level he's on now, so he tells her he's on level 10 because he pulled an all-nighter. Date starts to tremble, then she stretches her face because of how unfair this is. When he asks her what she's going on about, she asks him if he knows how many years it took her to reach level 10, so he asks her why she doesn't just do it. She asks him how, so he shows her how to use the mouse and the arrow to kill the monsters, and she successfully does it. While she's having fun, Rhea shows up and asks Toru if she can practice her sword skills in the dungeon since she hasn't used one in a while. Toru agrees and asks her if he can watch, but she tells him she'd like to do this alone. Toru agrees, so he tells Date they have to pause the click hunting. Toru lets Rhea into the dungeon and says he'll give her an hour. When he returns, he goes to check on Shizuku to ask a favor. He asks Shizuku if he can watch Rhea on the monitor and study her movements, hoping to be able to copy her movements if he wears Shizuku later on. Shizuku excitedly agrees, so Toru heads out to get dinner. Then he leaves Date and Shizuku at the computer table. Toru buys some meat for the night, and when he gets back, Date and Shizuku appear to tell him there's a problem. When he asks what happened, he's told that Rhea collapsed in the dungeon. In a flashback, some lady thanks Rhea for what she's done for a family called the Cartier family. Rhea humbly declines the praise, but the lady tells her there's no need to be so formal, since she's not her mistress anymore. The lady named Monica hugs Rhea and admits that she's always thought of Rhea as her sister since they're so close in age. Monica tells Rhea not to be sad because she's leaving, and Monica decides to give her a gift that is enough to pay back all the years she's served their family. She hands Rhea the sword, and Rhea soon wakes up from the dream of her past. Worried, she looks at her hands. Meanwhile, Date tells Toru that Rhea is fine and has no wounds. He's relieved by the news, so he asks why she collapsed. Shizuku explains that they were watching her swing her sword, and she just suddenly collapsed. Toru realizes that it must be psychological trauma because of her fear of the dungeon. Toru mentions that he was worried about her training alone, and Date tells him she might have gone alone because she wanted to overcome her trauma by herself. He decides it's probably better for her to stay here until she's better, but Date replies that it's possible that Rhea might never recover. He asks what she means, so she says there was another rumor in the guild, and this might be the deep-rooted cause of her trauma. When Date becomes hesitant, Toru asks her what it is, but Rhea appears and asks to tell him by herself. Date tries to tell Rhea she doesn't have to say it, but she insists. Rhea sits them down but says she needs to explain to them why she became an adventurer before she tells them this. She says her family, the House of Eldrax, has served the Earl of Cartier for generations. The Eldraxes swore their allegiance to them, but because the Eldraxes failed to produce any male heirs, Rhea became the head of the family. Around the time she was born, Bad harvests forced the Cartier family to reduce the area they controlled. Oddly, during that same time, only daughters were born to the Cartiers as well. Even though lesser nobles could have had a woman as a head of the family, the Cartiers preferred extinction to a female earl, so they decided to dissolve the house since they lacked an heir. The final member of its bloodline, Monica Cartier, was wed to a duke, and their family came to an end. On the day Monica was to be married, she gave Rhea a sword, which is a family heirloom. Rhea had no family to serve, but even though they were no more, she was still loyal to the Cartier family. So she came up with an idea to keep serving by helping all the orphans in the Cartier jurisdiction by earning money as an adventurer. She used the Cartier sword to protect their legacy, and this was why she became an adventurer. Date realizes that this was why Rhea went from knight to adventurer, which was a very drastic change. Date says you find a lot of rogues among adventurers, and when word got out that the beautiful former knight had signed up with the guild, everyone was talking about it. Toru eventually asks Rhea why she doesn't have her sword with her, so Rhea decides to tell him everything that happened until she met him. In another flashback, the kids that Rhea helped thank her for helping them, so she tells them it's her pleasure and wishes them safety. Suddenly she notices Date and quickly approaches her, asking if she'd like to form a party with her. Date calls her the meddling knight, so Rhea asks not to be so sour, and suggests they explore a dungeon together since it's safer than going alone. However, Date tells her she's already heard about the Adventurers Guild principles, so Rhea tries to explain that this wasn't why she said what she said. Rhea needs money because the orphans will go hungry without it, but she hasn't earned much because she's only been exploring with novice adventurers, and her last party could only go to the second subfloor of the dungeon. She needs to form a party with stronger adventurers, so she can earn more money and go as far as the fourth or fifth subfloors. She asks Date why she doesn't just join her instead of drinking all day, but Date insists that she won't be joining anybody. Suddenly, Rhea overhears some other adventurers complaining that they can only reach the third subfloor because the fourth floor downwards is too tough. Rhea spots them and wonders why the two of them are alone even though they're skilled, especially since a party should have at least 3 members. She asks Date who the guys are, so Date says their names are Klein and Barney, folks who fled from a neighboring country. She says she heard they're deserters, and she says no one wants to party with cowards. Rhea says she's going to talk with them, and Date tries to stop her but she doesn't listen. Rizuma soon approaches them and asks to join, but Klein asks her if she isn't the meddling knight. Barney loudly calls out Klein but speaks so insensitively, but Rhea tells him it's fine because she gets called that a lot. Eventually Barney asks her if she's also come to pester them like the others, so Rhea tells him she came to ask why they became adventurers. Barney asks her why she cares, so Rhea says she was wondering if they'd like to form a party. Shocked, Klein asks her if she's serious, and asks her if she hasn't heard that they're criminals in their homeland. The attention of the others soon turns towards them, so Klein tells her she doesn't want to party with them. Rhea asks them why it's a crime to avoid war like they did, so Klein tells her fleeing battle is cowardly, but Rhea insists that choosing not to kill is a form of courage. Klein hesitates, but Barney claps when he hears Rhea's statement, and tells Klein it's a crime to refuse such a beauty. Barney eventually convinces Klein, so Rhea is able to join them, even though Date doesn't like the idea. Since there's now 3 of them, traveling deeper into the dungeon became easier. Klein's a skilled swordsman with powerful attacks, and Barney is a mage who wields support and attack magic. Rhea usually takes the lead to defend with her shield, while Klein cuts down their enemies, and Barney follows up with his magic. They made an incredible party. After a certain dungeon raid, they rejoice over the success of the raid, especially because they found a valuable artifact. Barney says that Rhea is their lucky charm because they've had a string of victories. Both guys admit that their coordination has improved since Rhea joined, and Rhea agrees that the 3 of them complement each other. When Klein suddenly becomes red in the face, Rhea asks if something is wrong, but he says it's nothing. He eventually suggests they explore the 5th subfloor, so Rhea counters that the 5th is too dangerous, and they should stick to the 3rd and 4th. However, Klein insists that the 3 of them can handle it, and they'd be able to earn more money. Because of that, Rhea agrees but suggests they find another party member. Annoyed, Klein slams his cup on the table because no one else would party with them, but Barney warns him not to take it out on Rhea. Klein apologizes, so Rhea says they could try on their own. That makes Klein happy, but Rhea tells him they'd have to pull back if it's too much. When they reach the 5th floor, Klein's sword breaks while he fights the goblins, and he wonders what these goblins are doing on the 5th subfloor. Barney says they have to think of a way out, but one of the goblins jumps at Klein to smash his head in. Rhea rushes in front of him to block the attack, so Barney freezes the goblin's leg with an ice wind. Rhea throws her sword to Klein and tells him to use it, so he cuts down the goblins plaguing them. They realize that was a close call, so Barney tells Klein he forgot to pay attention to his gear. Klein says he didn't expect that there'd be goblins here, so Rhea tells him that the 5th subfloor is too much for them. She says it's time to retreat, so they agree. While they head out, Klein asks Rhea if he can use her sword till they get back, so he agrees, since he's their attacker. He thanks her and admits that her blade is extremely sharp since it's mithril. While they're walking away, one of the goblins fires a poisonous dart at Klein, so Rhea pushes him out of the way, but she gets hit in the leg. The poison causes her to fall to her knees, so Klein rushes to finish off the goblin. Rhea soon starts to tremble and she realizes the poison is paralytic. Barney tries to cast a healing spell, but it doesn't work because his level isn't enough. When Klein tells him to keep casting, Barney says he has to conserve magic to return to the surface, and he says they have to leave Rhea here, so Klein calls him a bastard and argues that they can't leave her here. Barney tells him they're in too deep, and they can't make it back while carrying her, but Klein refuses. Eventually Rhea asks Klein to stop, and reminds him that that's what the Adventurers Guild principles say. They must retreat before the monsters regroup. When a party member falters, Barney grabs the food and water on Rhea and tells her goodbye. He tells Klein to say his goodbye. Before he leaves, Klein tells Rhea he wanted to say something to her, but he eventually gives up and says goodbye. As they leave, Rhea smiles at them and tells them to take care. Eventually, Rhea manages to get up to find a place to hide, so the monsters don't meet her there. She soon finds an entrance and she wonders why Barney didn't try to help her hide, and why Klein didn't leave her sword. She starts to cry because she told him how much the sword meant to her, and she continues crying because no one will come save her even if she hides. After that, Rhea says she was abandoned in the dungeon without her weapon and any supplies. The paralysis poison spread through her body, leaving her immobile and terrified of her impending death. It was after this time that Toru came to save her, but now she's afraid to return to the dungeon even with a sword. Debink says there was another rumor floating around that Klein had inherited Rhea's sword, as per the Adventurers Guild principles, and she says that hearing the full story confirms her low opinion of Klein being trash. Rhea admits that when she was immobile she wasn't thinking about the safety of the others, and she somehow wished something would happen to them, and Debink realizes that Rhea feels ashamed of that. Debink on the other hand plans to strike Klein hard and get her sword back, but Rhea tells her she can't because the Adventurers Guild principles are backed by the law of the Kingdom of Francis, which would make her a criminal. Debink turns to Toru to support her, and says they can't let them get away with this. Toru doesn't say anything at first, and he starts to tremble. He mutters to himself that they can't forgive them, and he soon screams out calling Klein a lump of absolute scum. Rhea tries to tell Toru that there are laws and the principles of the guild, but Toru says he doesn't care. He tells Data they'll put them through the same nightmare they forced on Rhea, so Data jumps in on the plan. Shizuku soon appears and asks for permission to assist him as well, and Rhea is shocked to see a white slime. Toru doesn't explain and just asks the others to help him do this and get back Rhea's sword. While Rhea watches in confusion, Toru explains the plan to Rhea and Shizuku. Sometime later, Deet and the guys raid the dungeon, and she helps them burn down some monsters using her Mega Inferno. After that, Klein tells her she's incredible, and confirms the tales they've heard about her. Klein tells her she's gorgeous too, and asks if she's looking for a party, but Deet jokes that she'd think about it. She wonders how he can say that after abandoning Rhea, and she also realizes these guys are different from how Rhea described them. Klein seems super creepy, and too forward, while Barney keeps looking at her like he's trying to size her up. She guesses that Rhea must see the best in everyone. Later, Klein tells Dates that her necklace artifact seems very useful. She realizes he might also be sneaking a look at her jugs, but she just tells him her moon pendant lights up her surroundings without needing a torch, and it's basically the most valuable artifact she has. Barney jokingly asks what she thinks it's worth, but Deet says it's not worth that much, and mentions that Klein's sword looks more valuable. Klein agrees, and says the sword is made of pure mithril, but Deet tries to hold back the urge to punch him for flaunting a sword that's not his. She remembers Toru's plan for her to lead them down to the iron door. Eventually, Barney tells Klein to knock it out, so Deet realizes Klein's just an idiot, but Barney's the one she has to watch out for. Eventually, Barney admits that he never imagined that Miss Deet would want to party with them, so she says they piqued his interest. For Toru's plan to work, she returned to the surface and posted a recruitment flyer on the guild's notice board. The two guys came to apply to earn some money, and it also interested them to join her because she usually moves alone, and because she's going to the 5th floor. Barney mentions that there's a memorial service on the 5th floor, which is just adventurer slang that means to loot the belongings of adventurers who've passed away. Deet protests that whatever they'll find will barely be worth anything, and she knows it's also very messed up to loot a former party member. Barney tells her they have a lead on a great memorial service, and says it involves the armor and shield of a former knight, which is worth a lot, so he suggests they split it 3 ways. Dorit realizes these guys are degenerates who love such dirty things, especially after having gotten Rhea's sword. Although they've been planning to go back to the 5th floor with someone else, no one would follow them because of their terrible reputation, and because of the suspicion on how they inherited Rhea's sword. When they enter the dungeon, Klein mentions that Rhea would be so jealous to find out that they got the lovely Miss Deet to party with them. Deet jokingly calls him a flatter, but she secretly wants to crack his skull. When they get to the area, they look around and Rhea points them to where they can find Rhea's remains. Klein and Barney are shocked to see Rhea's body still intact because they believe no one can survive weeks in the dungeon without food or supplies. Defrit jokes that if she's still alive, they should probably let her know how they abandoned her and decided to party with Defrit. The guys become uncomfortable and are certain that Rhea can't be alive. Defrit tells them she's just kidding, so she asks them to hurry to grab her gear. They move reluctantly, so she shoves them until they move closer, hoping that she's not alive. Eventually, Klein apologizes to Rhea and attempts to remove her armor, but Rhea grabs his hand and asks both men if it's truly them. Shocked, Klein jumps backwards, and Barney tells Rhea he's shocked she's still alive. Rhea tells them she is, so she thanks them for coming back for her. Klein lies that they came to rescue their friend. However, Date confronts Klein about saying that they were going to sell her gear earlier, but Barney pleads with Rhea that they'll find another way to give her her share. Rhea asks them if Date is telling the truth that they came to perform a memorial service, so Barney says they didn't, and Rhea smiles at them. Finally, she asks Klein if he's gotten his own sword since he came from the surface to rescue him, then she asks him to return it. Klein stutters, so Barney explains that the sword is Klein's now, according to the guild's principles, so Rhea tells them that's a pity. Immediately, Toru clicks the button and the door comes down on both men. They try to run, but Rhea grabs their legs and doesn't let them move. When they ask her to let them go, she transforms her face into that of a skeleton and asks them to give back the sword. Scared shitless, they soon pass out, so Toru comes to commend the ladies on their nice acting. Date says the men pissed her off, and Shizuku, who had played the role of Rhea, says even slimes get angry. Toru also notices the guys wet themselves, so he takes a picture. He goes in to print the picture, and when he comes back he asks Date to write a message on a paper for him, and he drops it by the unconscious men, along with their picture. Later they notice that the men have woken up from the computer. On the note, they see that they'll face a deadly curse if they come here again, and they watch them run away in horror. After that, Toru returns to Rhea with her sword. She asks him if it's over, so he tells her it's done, and gives her the sword. After she collects it, she embraces the sword, and rejoices that the sword Lady Monica gave her is back. She asks Toru what he would have done if he was with her when she had been paralyzed and unable to move, so Toru says he would have carried her and escaped with her, even though it meant letting a monster get both of them. That makes Rhea red in the face, so she steps forward and kisses him, much to his surprise. She tells him that's what she thought he would say, but Toru soon becomes worried, so he tells her there's something he needs to tell her. He confesses that he's not some great mage, and he apologizes for lying to her. Rhea tells him she had already figured it out, and that surprises Toru. She tells him there were hints here and there, but being with him has been so enjoyable. She also apologizes for causing him trouble, but he tells her she hasn't because he likes being with her. Eventually she tells him it doesn't matter who he is, so she kneels with her sword and pledges her sword and loyalty to him, as long as she lives. Shocked, Toru asks her to wait, because it's coming out of nowhere. Because of that, Rhea asks him to take her as his bride in that case, and that shocks him further. She tells him she wants him to become her new master, whether as his bride or knight, because she feels so hopeless without a master, but she hopes he chooses the bride option. Pushed to a corner, Toru picks having her as his knight so he can rely on her when they adventure into the other world. That doesn't satisfy Rhea, so she nonchalantly pledges her sword and her life to him. Then she says she guesses they'll go on adventures, and he'll have plenty of options since Date and Shizuku are around. However, she asks him to tell her anytime if he does decide to have her as his bride. Sometime later, Rhea goes into the dungeon to practice. When she's done, Toru checks up on her and commends her work. Ever since she got her mithril sword back, she's been training with it every day in the dungeon, and she seems to be overcoming her fear. Toru tells her he's finishing up dinner, so he asks her to come eat. Later, Date comes to ask what they're having for dinner, so Toru tells her it's something called sukiyaki hot pot. It's an elaborate meal, so he tells them he wanted to make up for the fact that they missed lunch. The ladies enjoy the smell and sight, and when they eat it, they fall in love with the taste. Toru tells them he used quality beef, so he gives Shizuku some too. While they're eating, Rhea points out that even if they rush, it will still take them 2 days to make it through the dungeon to the surface. She asks what they're going to bring for food supplies, so Date mentions that Toru will carry the food while they face the monsters. She wonders if the food won't be too heavy for Toru to carry, but he tells her not to worry because he has a good idea about what to pack. When it's time for them to leave, they enter the dungeon and Toru locks it from behind. Date asks him what he was doing to the wall, so he tells her he was locking the door. Surprised, she tells him she still can't see anything beyond a blank stone wall. Toro asks one of them to hold on to his spare key for him in case he loses the other one, so Date excitedly agrees and keeps it between her melons. Shocked, Toro asks her why she's putting it there, but she assures him it's secure. Before it falls, Toro snatches it out and hands it to Rhea. Date laments that he won't trust her, but Rhea becomes surprised and tells Toro she can see the door. That surprises the others, especially Date, who can't see anything. Toru wonders how Rhea can suddenly see it, so he gives his copy of the key to Date. Suddenly Date is able to see the door, so she realizes it must be because of the key. Toru asks Rhea to try opening the door with her own key, and she's able to open it. When Toru confirms that they seem to be able to see the door and get into the apartment with the key, he tells the ladies to follow him. He leads them to the tatami room, and the ladies are surprised they can see through the window. Rhea sees his world for the first time, so Toru asks Date to pass the key to Shizuku, who becomes able to see past the window too. That amazes Toru, so he tells Rhea not to lose the key. As they head back into the dungeon, Dee throws a tantrum that she wants a key too, but Toru wonders why, since they're going into the other world, and Ria's just holding on to it and not keeping it. Suddenly Ria asks Toru that she'd like to have a personal key, so he tells her she can keep it. When she thanks him, Dee demands to know why she gets to keep it and protests the injustice in Martin Luther King Jr. style. Shizuku soon asks for a key too, so Toru considers getting copies made at a locksmith. Dee and Shizuku insist they go immediately. Shortly after, they reach the locksmith shop, and Toru's told it'll take 30 minutes to get 2 extra copies of his key. When he comes out, he's shocked to see that a crowd of men have gathered around Ria and Date. He figures it's because they're beautiful and they don't look Japanese, so he rushes to grab the girls to take them somewhere else. Since they have some time before the keys are ready, Ria asks Toru if she can see more of his world, and Date agrees because it was evening the last time she came. Shizuku chimes in, so Toru suggests they head into the dungeon tomorrow and just explore the city today. They agree and have a tour of the city. The ladies are amazed by the tall buildings, the fast cars, and the number of people moving around. While Ria is amazed, Date points out that there's also amazing food, and she asks Ria to let her introduce her to one of them. Toru realizes the only one she knows is crepes, but Ria soon panics because she doesn't have any of this world's money. Date assures her it's on Toru, who has no choice but to agree. The ladies soon get some of the crepes, and Ria is surprised by how delicious it is. They enjoy many more delicacies, and enjoy the sight of all the beautiful people. When they see all the beautiful clothes they're wearing, the ladies ask Toru if they can try on some clothes, so they go to a female clothing store. Toru gets glances from other ladies, and he feels out of place. Soon after, Ria and Date come out in nice clothing and ask Toru what he thinks. Toru tells them they look great, so they rush to try out a few other ones as women love to do. Toru endures the glances for a chance to see the ladies dress up, and he listens to them bicker. Later, Date comes out with a gown and a ranch hat, then asks Toru how it looks. She looks embarrassed and asks him if it looks strange, but he tells her she looks amazing. Ria soon comes out in excitement and reminds her she said she looks super cute. After the ladies pick out some clothes, they thank Toru for buying the clothes for them. He tells them he's glad they like them, so he considers getting more coins from the other world because his wallet has been bled dry. Later they sit in a park, so the ladies admit that Japan looks amazing and is peaceful. Ria asks him if there are any wars, so Toru says they've not had any in the last 70 years or so. Date realizes this is why it's so developed, but she asks if their country doesn't have any elves or demi-humans because she didn't see any. Toru tells her their world has never had any, and that shocks Date, so she asks if they were wiped out by the humans. Toru tells her humans usually just fight other humans in wars, but he's never heard of any battles with other races. However, he says that giants and demi-humans show up in myths but are considered old folk tales. Dewey tells Toru she's sorry about being selfish about the key, and Ria also apologizes since it's his house. He tells them not to worry, since they can come visit any time, and they can explore more of Japan together. The next day, they head back to the dungeon with their keys, so they begin their journey to the other world. They soon get deep into the 5th level of the Labyrinth of Darkness, and they run into huge rats. The ladies charge forward to take them out, while Toru's heart almost beats out of his chest due to surprise. Date teases that he's too jumpy, so he tells her they don't have monsters in Japan. Date tells him he should be able to deal with those rats at his level, so Toru recalls that he's reached level 10 but he doesn't know if it's strong or weak. Toru mentions that he also picked up the character appraisal skill, which might help him see their stats, so Date tells him to try it out. When he activates the skill, he's able to see their stats, and he sees they're both at high levels. However, he notices it won't show him all their details, so Date says it's because his skill level is still low. As his level increases, he'll be able to see more information. He notices that Date has increased by a level after kissing him twice and uses his door to crush monsters. He recalls that Ria also kissed him once, so he asks Ria if her max level has gone up recently. She says it has, but she doesn't know why, so she asks him if he knows. He tries to explain that it's because they kissed, but Date cuts him short and demands to know how the two of them could do that, and she reminds him that he hasn't done anything with her since. Later they continue their journey and take down some mushroom monsters too. They keep moving until they get to the 4th level. Toru becomes sweaty and wonders if this is really the shortest route. Date says they moved very fast, so he asks her if 4 hours of walking while being attacked by monsters is fast. Ria tells him they moved fast because she and her party were wandering about half a day before she got hit with the paralysis poison. However, Toru suggests they take a lunch break, so Darut says they can rest at a nearby spring. Toru asks her how close it is, so she says it's about an hour from here, and he has no choice but to continue the journey. Later they reach the room where the spring is, and Toru is surprised that there's a spring here. When he looks to his side, he sees some other worlders, and he notices they look tough. Shizuku appears and says that they are, so Toru asks Shizuku to hide because it's better they don't see a rare white slime. However, Date tells him not to worry because attacking other parties is forbidden by the Adventurers Guild, so they don't get a bounty on their head. She also tells him those guys aren't that tough, so she tells him he can use his skill on them to confirm, but warns him not to use his skill on the short guy with red hair. He asks why he can't, so Date says he's probably a thief, so he might have the skill sensor ability and it'll warn him if he uses his appraisal skill on him. Because of that, Toru decides to try his skill on the guy with the cross-shaped scar, and he finds out he's level 12, which is just 2 more levels than his own. Deet tells him that an adventurer that reaches level 10 without dying has some skill, which means he's been in the business for at least 3 years. That surprises Toru, so she tells him that most adventurers that are at level 10 or lower can't defeat a single monster, and something like a giant centipede is out of the question. She teases him for safely clicking away at monsters from his room, so he asks her how she could tell that they aren't that tough. She says it's clear from the state they're in, so Toru guesses she must be speaking from experience. They sit to have lunch, so Toru tells them he'll be preparing it, since they've been fighting all day. He goes through all the things he brought, and he decides to make some ramen. He first boils some water, and then he adds the noodles, powdered soup stock and freeze-dried veggies. It's soon ready, which surprises the ladies, who love the smell. After he serves the food, they begin to eat, and they tell him the food is delicious. While they're eating, Toru notices the men staring at them, so he realizes it's because of their loud slurping and the strong scent of ramen. He asks Date what the adventurers of this world normally eat in dungeons. So Date says you can get dried fruits and meat if you're lucky, or maybe salted fish. If you're unlucky, you get dried stone-like hunks of bread that you have to soak in water, or sometimes you don't have anything to eat. Toru starts preparing another batch so he can share it with the other adventurers. Deet tells him not to do that, but Rhea offers to lend him a hand. When he serves it, Deet tells him she doesn't think they should be doing this, but he and Rhea approach them regardless. Shortly after, he approaches the men and the cross-shaped scar guy glares at him and asks what he needs. Toru realizes the man doesn't trust them, so he tells them they've made a bit of soup and they're welcome to it if they like. This shocks the men, so they ask what it'll cost. Toru laughs and hands it to them for free, and the men look at each other in confusion. When they don't do anything, one of them asks him if he put in poison, and that shocks Toru. One of the men points out that he's speaking the monster tongue, he's dressed oddly, carrying strange artifacts, and he's got food they've never seen before. However, Toru reminds them that adventurers don't attack other adventurers, but the man points out that the guild doesn't know everything that happens in the dungeon, and dead men tell no tales. One of them also notices that the lady standing next to Toru is Miss Arya, the unyielding knight, and he mentions that he heard Arya was dead. Rhea assures them she's alive, so Toru realizes they have too many red flags to be trusted. Eventually he tells the men they can throw it out if they don't want it, but one of them says he's going to eat it. The others ask him if he's serious, so he says it smells so great and he couldn't stand them slurping, so it doesn't matter if he dies. He soon begins gobbling it up, and when he freezes, the others ask him if he's okay. Surprised, the man says this stuff tastes so good, so the others join him. While the men enjoy themselves, Toru and Rhea return to their group. When they continue their journey, Deet admits that she's surprised that the men ate it. She figures that his innocent looks worked for him. Rhea notices Toru carrying something, so he says that one of the guys gave him a flower to thank him. The flower surprises Deet, so she says it's an ancient flower. Toru asks if it's rare since the group had a whole load of them, so Dekale tells him the flower can be used to make middle potions. She says they're always high in demand, but only some adventurers know where they can be found. She says the information is very profitable, and says they're trying to tell him the ancient flowers bloom somewhere on this level, and he should try searching for them. When they get to the 3rd level of the labyrinth, Toru is surprised that such a place exists within an underground dungeon. Dekale tells him that when this dungeon was discovered decades ago, this palace was a major find. Soon after, they're ambushed by skeleton monsters, but Rhea slashes them into pieces with her sword. Toru is surprised that she took them down so easily, and he asks if they're not strong. Dekale tells him they're not that tough, and they're slow since they don't have any muscles, and they carry terrible weapons. She says it's a great chance to train him, which unsettles Toru. Dekale tells him that clicking away at his computer has leveled him up, but he doesn't have the skills or intuition to go with his skills. Rhea offers to take care of his bag and hands him her shield. Toru notices her shield is pretty heavy, so he points out that she must be strong to carry it around so easily. Embarrassed, Rhea asks him if strong women aren't his type, so he quickly tells her that's not what he meant. They put Toru in front and make him face some skeletons with his pickaxe in hand. After taking several of them down, Toru realizes the skeletons are weak, but there are so many. When he admits that he's tried, Rhea says there's a good campsite nearby. They soon get there and see some men eating. When they go into the camp, Toru is surprised to see prison rooms. Rhea explains that it's so they don't have to be worried about being attacked by monsters. They soon enter one of them, so they decide to rest for the day. That evening, Toru prepares some rice porridge and they go to sleep. The next day, they head out and reach the 2nd level. When they get there, Toru is surprised that they're in a forest, and he can't believe they're still underground. Deet tells him it's because the ancient forest is filled with luminous moss, so they keep moving. Later they have lunch. While they're eating, Deet tells Toru that he and Shizuku need to take special care when they reach the 1st level. She explains that the 1st level has become a refuge for humans and demi-humans who don't have a home on the surface, so there's a lot of criminals and frequent turf wars. Apparently the Thieves Guild makes its living through theft and pickpocketing, while the Merchant Guild deals in goods that are illegal on the surface. Recently, the Mercenaries Guild has risen to prominence by offering protection deals and other things, so she advises that they steer clear of them. Toru mentions that the Thieves Guild sounds worse, and Ria agrees. However, Dee says they mainly focus on rich merchants and the noble class, so they won't bother them. Ria recalls that thieves stole quite a bit from the Cartier family, so Dee tells her that the Thieves Guild takes in a lot of kids with no place to go, so they sometimes have to take from the means to survive. Ria insists that those kids should be properly placed in orphanages, but Deet protests that the orphanage can't take them all. Toru calms them down and asks about the Merchant Guild, so he's told they're not good or bad, but they just deal in weapons and armor, along with food and other adventuring supplies. They also sell illicit drugs, move stolen goods, operate underground gambling dens, and deal in human trafficking. Deet says they depend on the Mercenary Guild regardless of this because it's a necessary evil, but Ria brings up a rumor she heard about a certain someone frequenting those gambling dens, referring to Deet. Toru also asks about the Mercenaries Guild, so Ria says they're the worst. Apparently they run a protection racket, extort money from first-level storekeepers and adventurers. They also control one of the easier paths to the lower levels, but they charge a toll to use it. Toru wonders why the adventurers don't stand up to them, but Det says they'll be immediately outnumbered, so they have to avoid them as much as possible. Toru starts to have doubts about going up to the first level, and Shizuku agrees, so Det admits they may be targeted because Toru and Shizuku are unusual. Because of that, Toru suggests that Shizuku becomes his clothing. Toru asks Shizuku if she remembers what those adventurers they ran into looked like, so she says she does. She tries imitating their clothing, so she turns into one of the adventurers' armor, and the ladies tell him he looks perfect. The only problem is that his pickaxe ruins the whole illusion, so Date tells him she'll buy him a steel sword when they get to the first level. They keep moving and soon reach the first level. Toru realizes the place looks sketchier than he imagined, but he's told this place is still very safe because it's run by the Merchant Guild. Suddenly some streetwalkers call Toru's attention and ask him to come play with them. He's flustered by the sight of elves and starts to stare, but Shizuku notifies Toru that the ladies with him are watching him. Shocked, he turns back and apologizes that they're the first elves he's seen besides her. But Deet tells him those elves are pretty common and she's a high elf. She tells him not to lump her with an elf who'd work in that kind of place. They soon continue their journey, and when they reach a weapon shop, they enter so Deet can fulfill her promise of getting Toru a sword. Toru finds a great sword, and the shop owner tells him he has a great eye. They soon buy it, and Deet rejoices because they got such a beauty for half the price. While they're rejoicing, Ria checks the sword and tells them that this is just a useless lump of iron. That shocks Toru, so she tells him the cutting edge is way too dull, and he couldn't cut through paper with it. Apparently all that's good about it is how it looks, so Toru realizes that's why it was so cheap. Deet laughs and tells him it doesn't matter since it was just to complete his costume. While they're walking, Toru notices a crowded place, and he's told that it's where the brokers are. They deal in goods from the surface, dungeon loot, stolen and sometimes illegal goods. Toru notices one man buying a little kid. Dizzy tells him the man is from the Mercs Guild, which is clear from the tattoo on his shoulder. Dizzy tells Toru not to mess with the Merc Guild, but she doesn't realize that Ria has gone to ask the man if he's selling the child. The man says he is, so Ria asks him what his price is. Shortly after, the others join Ria where she's bargaining with the man. They ask her what her plan for the boy is, so she says she'll take him to the orphanage she supports. The kid says they can't take him to an orphanage because they'll just go after his sister in the Thieves Guild, so the man holding him laughs that this is what they get for hanging around their turf. This annoys them, so Ria says she'll buy the boy, but the man says he's not selling because he can sell him through the brokers to a brothel and make a lot more. That annoys Ria and Toru, but Doubt reminds them not to piss this guy off. She reminds them messing with the Mercs Guild on the first level will just make their dungeon exploration harder. She grabs Toru's sword and slams it on the Merc guy's head without looking, but she soon realizes what she's done. That annoys the guy, so he signals to his fellows who surround them in an instant. They're immediately outnumbered, and they're unable to find a way to break through. Meanwhile, some lady holds a ball nearby and tosses it in the middle. The ball explodes into a ball of smoke, and the girl grabs Toru through the smoke so they can escape. Although Toru can't see her well, he can see her tail, which surprises him. When the Merc guy realizes they've escaped in the smoke, he sends his men after them. Meanwhile, the girl keeps pulling Toru away. Toru realizes this lady he doesn't know just saved him, and she soon leads him to an iron door. The girl tells the person inside that she's the one, referring to herself as Cat. After Cat supplies the password, which is steal from the fat pigs, the person inside opens the door. Cat suggests they hide here for a while, and Toru thanks her but says he's worried about his friends and the kid. She tells him his friends are fine because her colleagues got them out during the confusion. When they get in, Cat tells the guy who opened the door to report back to HQ, and he obeys. Once inside, Cat removes her hood and asks him to sit wherever he likes. Toru is surprised to see her Cat here, so Cat angrily asks him if he has something against the beast folk who just saved his life. He tells her he doesn't, but he was just surprised. He also thanks her for all that, then asks her why she saved him. Cat tells him they all just happened to be there, but they were after the kid, Nick. Toru remembers that the kid had said that his sister had been picked up by the Thieves Guild, so Toru asks Kat if she's with the Thieves Guild. Kat says it should be obvious, and tells him the Thieves Guild can't openly oppose the Mercs Guild, so it was good for Toru and his team to take the heat for them. She chuckles at how Dent smacked the guy in the head, and they soon exchange names. Kat tells Toru they owe him for helping Nick, so she asks how they can repay him. Toru replies that saving them is enough repayment, but Kat insists she still feels like they owe him something because they only got into that mess while trying to help Nick. Because of that, Toru decides to make a request, but he tells her it might sound like a big request. He asks her if he can have this room, and when she looks surprised, he tells her he doesn't want what's in it. She admits that it's a big request, so Toru agrees. He wants the room because the iron door is the same as the room on the 5th floor, so he wonders if this one might also connect to his apartment. Kat tells him she can't grant that because it's above her pay grade, so Toru concedes, but he asks her if he can poke around. She asks him what for, and when he can't find something to say, she asks him if he's a scholar. She realizes he doesn't really seem like an adventurer, and that would explain the monster tongue. He says he's something like a scholar, so she tells him he can take a look around as long as she's with him. Later, while he looks around, Kat asks him if he does not like beast folks. Confused, he asks her why she asks, so she says most humans don't like beast folks. Toru is surprised at how things are in this world, so he tells her beast folks are actually well liked in his field. Eventually, he asks her if Kat is her real name, so she says it's a nickname. It surprises him that she'd pick a nickname like that since people don't like beast folks, so he decides to take a peek at her stats. He activates his character appraisal, but he's unable to. Kat asks him if he just tried to peek her stats, so he says he wanted to know her real name, and he remembers that thieves can sense skill use. Since he used his skill first, she decides to use her own character appraisal on him too, and tells him hers is quite high level. She soon spots his name, which she finds weird, so she jokingly asks him where he's from. She also sees his limitless potential skill and also notices he has a latent unique skill. She says the skill is called Kiss a Woman up to 3 times per day to increase her max level by 1 skill per kiss. Toru wonders what kind of long name skill that is, so he realizes that this explains what's been happening. Before he knows it, Kat jumps on him and suggests they test out his skill. She immediately kisses him and is surprised when her max skill goes up by 1. Toru asks her to get off him, so she pleads for one more chance, but he refuses. She tells him it's clear he doesn't like beast folks, so he tries to explain that he does, so she uses the opportunity to kiss him thrice. Toru is stunned, so he finally asks her to get off him. Suddenly, Kat starts to blush, so she asks him if that didn't get him excited. She soon starts to undress, and she tells him her name is Miriam, but he can call her Mirio. Toru asks her why she's taking her clothes off, so she says he must want to do more after all that kissing. He tells her he doesn't, but she doesn't agree, because his lower parts seem to have risen to the occasion. While she rubs herself on him, she hears the other ladies asking if they've gotten there. Meanwhile, Ria promises to crush the Thieves Guild if they've done anything bad to Toru, but Date reminds her they saved their lives. Toru, on the other hand, realizes he's cooked because they'll see them in this position. Toru asks Miri to get off him because the others are coming, but she kisses him again because she's too excited to hold back. Outside the room, the other guy, whose name is literally Guy, comes to the door and says the password. Kat becomes sad because things were just getting good, so she asks them to come back because they're busy. That shocks the ladies, so they insist that they see Toru and call out his name. Kat tells Toru to ignore them so they can enjoy themselves, so Ria tells Date to blow the door open with her magic. Toru tries to push Miri off himself, but mistakenly grabs her jugs. She makes happy noises and says she knew he was into it, but he soon pushes her to the ground. After putting her robe back on her, he rushes to the door to let the others in and says he's glad they're fine. Ria asks him if everything is fine because they heard something strange in here, but Toru tells her he's okay. Deet asks him who the girl is and why she said they were busy, so he lies that their hands were full because they were moving some boxes. Meanwhile, Kat watches them with sadness on her face. Eventually, Ria says it will be a bother and things will be more difficult with the Mercenaries Guild watching them. However, Deet says the thief from earlier told her he'd take a look around, so they should take the chance to slip out when the mercs disappear. Toru wishes there was a path between the surface and the second level that passed through the thief territory. The ladies say they don't know of any, so Toru asks Miri, but she doesn't say anything. When Miri doesn't respond, they wonder if she's unwell. When they continue their discussion, Miri comes back to, so she asks Toru if he's going to the surface. He says they are, so Miri suggests they join the Thieves Guild, because the Thieves Guild has a non-aggression pact with the mercs, and they can use their routes and facilities. Deet starts to consider the idea, but Ria angrily reminds her they can't just join the Thieves Guild, since they make a living by robbing others. Roa insists they're taking Nick and his sister to the orphanage on the surface, but Del reminds her that taking a child along increases the danger, and they can just leave him with the thieves since they saved him. Roa insists that living down here and learning how to steal is no way for a child to grow up, so Miri tells her that kids who lost their parents hear rumors about their guild and seek them out on their own. When Ria frowns at her, Miri admits that the mercs will be looking for Nick, so it's probably better he goes to the surface. Eventually Toru asks Miri if she knows a safe route for them and 2 children, so Miri asks him if he can't at least spend a day here. Toru explains that they're in a hurry, so she reminds him about his desire to check out the room, and Toru says he can when they finish up on the surface. Soon after, Guy shows up again and says the password. When Kat opens the door, he tells her that the mercenaries have pulled out. They both start to whisper, and Guy receives an instruction from Kat. Behind them, Toru asks if they're talking about Nick's sister, but Kat just tells him that their boss wants to thank them for saving Nick. However, Toru tries to say they're in a hurry so they can't see their boss, but Didit quickly blocks his mouth. She warns him not to say anything stupid like refusing an audience with a guild leader. She reminds him that these sorts of people are pretty particular about their reputation, and he doesn't want to insult someone who leads 800 thieves. She warns him that he doesn't want to have the Thieves Guild as his enemies, so Toru agrees and asks Miri to lead the way. They soon head out to the streets and Toru looks around. Miri asks him if he thinks things look pretty bad, and when he tries to say something she says there are more thieves than merchants and business isn't booming. She asks him what he thinks as a scholar, so he says it might need urban redevelopment. She asks him what that means, so he says it's the investing of lots of money into older areas of a city to make them more convenient and modern. She asks him what he means by modern, so he says since their main problem is security, they can combine all the shops and eateries into one large building. That way they can protect the sellers from creeps. Ria admits that it's a great idea, since it would also be safe for children and may even draw customers from the surface. Excited, Miri asks him to tell her more about this urban redevelopment thing. When he gives her the rundown of the whole thing, Date adds that she may be able to do this by getting some big companies on her side, and says she can win over the Merchants Guild. Toru says she can also convince the merchants by giving them the right to do business here. Miri thanks Toru and believes the idea might work. When they get there, Toru realizes that Miri seems involved in many of the activities here, so he wonders how high up she is. When they enter the building, they are welcomed by a woman named Noella, who introduces herself as the aide to the guild leader. Noella tells them the guild leader wishes to thank them, so she leads them ahead and asks Kat and Nick to wait behind. Soon after, she leads them into a room where the guild leader, Dorothea II, waits behind a veil. Toru is shocked to find out that the leader is a woman. He stutters and says they're pleased to meet her and thanks her for the audience. When Dorothea keeps silent, Noella explains that she acts as their leader's voice and asks that they pardon this method of conversation. Toru realizes that it must be hard for the leader to have to hide her identity to lead these people, and Dorothea whispers something to Noella. Noella soon tells them that the leader appreciates their actions in assisting Nick, but because they're now being targeted by the Mercenaries Guild, she says the leader would like to offer them positions with the Thieves Guild. She asks if they accept, and when Toru tries to diplomatically turn down the offer, Ria bluntly says they will never do such. Deet tries to remind Ria of her manners, but Ria further adds that they will be taking custody of Nick and his sister. Noella tells Ria she's free to have her opinion, and says they've not forced Nick to join the guild so he can choose. Ria tells them that those children should be living somewhere safer. Dorothea soon whispers to Noella, who signals to Toru. Toru, who's terrified, asks what she wants, so she asks if he can promise to provide a safe, nurturing environment for Nick and his sister Mary. Toru tries to explain, but Ria immediately says she guarantees that it's better than this place. Immediately, Toru asks for a moment to speak to his party. When they're alone, Toru asks Ria if the orphanage she supports is a good place for the kids, and she says it is. He also asks Deet if she's okay with escorting the kids, so Deet agrees that it's for the best. He asks Shizuku too, and she agrees. After that, they return and Toru says they promise to take care of the kids. Because of that, Noella says they'll entrust the kids to their care, but she says that one of their own will accompany them until both kids are delivered safe and sound. She adds that having a member of their guild with them will prevent issues occurring with other underworld guilds, and also make things move faster. Toru agrees and says they'll make their way back here to check in after escorting the kids. When they step out, Noella asks them to stay for a bit while one of them goes to bring the kids out. While that's going on, Toru notices Miri is not around, especially because he was hoping to see her again before they leave. The kids soon show up and Ria goes to greet them. Shortly after, Miri shows up and tells them that she's going with them. When he appears surprised, she asks him if he has a problem with that, so he quickly says he doesn't. She says she spent her whole life down here and she's always wanted to go to the surface. Kat says the boss also gave her the go-ahead to show him a secret exit to the surface that only the thieves know about, and that excites them. When they head out, Kat asks Toru what he thinks of their boss, so he says she seemed really nice. He says he couldn't see much, but she's obviously beautiful, and he jokes that her front rack shows why she's the boss. That makes Kat jealous, so she pinches his butt and walks away while he screams. They soon reach the secret exit at the headquarters, and Toru admits he's kind of nervous to go to the surface. Kat asks him if he doesn't go back to the surface much, so he lies that he gets busy. Soon after, they reach the surface and spot a city. Turo is mesmerized by the sight of another world, and he's told the city he's seeing is called Heraklion, also called the City of Darkness because of the dungeon. Rhea asks him if he doesn't think their world is lacking since they don't have air conditioners or computers like his house. But Deet protests that he can't have an opinion yet, and suggests they go to the towns and shops so he can see they have their own useful items and stuff. Both ladies turn to Turo to hear a reply, but he just asks Shizuku what she thinks, so she says the air is nice and everything looks so pretty. Turo says he agrees, and that makes the ladies excited. They soon enter the gate of the city, and Toru is amazed by the sight of a city in another world. He thinks it's amazing and suggests they head to the Adventurers Guild so they can remove the open quest for Anami. Date protests they're supposed to rest at an inn first, but Toru reminds her this has to be done first because Anami is done for if an adventurer finds him first. Date reminds him that the journey has been hard on the kids, so he agrees to find an inn first. When they get into an inn, Toru is intrigued by the wooden beams and bed. Date informs him that this place serves dinner, so she suggests they take a nap until then. Data uses the sleeping bag because it's more comfortable, and when he sees Kat captivated by it, he gives her his own sleeping bag. Because the kids are sharing a bed, there's only one bed left, so Rhea suggests she sleeps on the floor in her sleeping bag while Toru uses the bed. Toru says he can't, and he suggests they do it together. He asks what he means, so Toru realizes how awkward it is to ask her to sleep together with him again, so he says they can explore the city together. Rhea gladly accepts, so she takes him out. While they're out, she suggests they go to a great temple. Toru feels tense, and tells her he doesn't have much interest in religion. He had secretly hoped this would be like a date, but Rhea tells him it's not about religion because he can learn the common tongue at the temple. The common tongue is a skill that reinforces with telepathy what you say out loud, and that's the only reason Toru has been able to understand Deet and Rhea. The only reason they've been able to understand him is because Japanese is the same as the monster language of their world. Toru realizes learning the common tongue will allow him to talk with Nick and Mary. They soon reach the Great Temple and Rhea tells him there are also priests here who give blessings to heal wounds. Toru mentions that it would be a big help to have someone who can cast healing magic in an adventuring party, and Rhea agrees, but explains that those who can cast blessings find plenty of work without the risk of adventuring. Soon after, Rhea tells one of the priests that her friend comes from a remote land and asks if he can grant him the common tongue skill. The man agrees and asks them to donate 2 gold coins to the church. When Rhea does that, the priest calls on the goddess Nalia to grant her blessings upon Toru. After that, the man tells Toru he can now use the common tongue, but Toru says he doesn't feel anything and wonders if they were scammed. Annoyed, the priest calls him a brat and tells him to watch what he says so he doesn't place a curse on him. Later, they leave the temple, and Toru admits that the common tongue is amazing and he can even use this to talk to the tribes in the Amazon. Rhea tells him that his world may have many useful things, but theirs has its wonders too. Toru agrees and asks where they're going next, so Rhea suddenly begins to fidget and says there's somewhere else she'd like to go with him. She says it's another temple, but it's a smaller one. She suddenly changes her mind and says he won't find it interesting, but Toru insists she leads the way. When they get close, Toru asks what's going on, because he can hear music, but Rhea just drags him so they can move closer to the crowd. When they move closer, Toru notices a wedding procession happening in the middle, and he watches as the bride and groom state their vows. After that, the couple kisses, and Rhea watches with rapt attention. Toru notices how captivated she is, and when they leave, he asks her how many times she has come to watch weddings. She becomes flustered, and later says that maybe someday both of them can, but she doesn't finish her statement. After an awkward silence, Toru agrees that they can come again to watch the weddings, so she happily agrees, even though she meant something else. The next morning, Toru remarks that the dinner and breakfast at the inn were great, but Deet just glares at him. When he asks what's wrong, she accuses him of going around the town with Rhea and flirting the whole time. Toru says that's not what happened, so she protests that she wanted to show him around too. He reminds her that she's showing him the guild hall today, and the reason she's the one showing him today is because she made such a fuss the day before when he returned with Rhea. When they get in, she dismisses his questions and leaves him behind since he can use the common tongue too. She leaves him to handle the clerk and heads to the pub, so Toru is forced to go to the business counter on his own. When he gets there, he explains that he'd like to offer a quest listing, so the attendant asks him for his name. When she also asks what kind of request he has, he says he wants a monster captured. So the woman tells him that the guild can contact him optionally after the monster is captured. Toru tells her he's after a pair of orcs down on the 5th level of the underworld dungeon. He explains that they're not hostile towards adventurers, and the lighter-skinned one keeps going on in the monster tongue about strange things like television and subscription fees. Because orcs are pretty strong, the woman says the capture quest will probably be rank C, and the reward will have to be about 20 gold pieces. She says there's also a commission fee of 4 gold pieces, as well as an additional 6 upon the completion of the quest. That's a lot, but Toru realizes they'll at least get back 26 of the coins once they capture him themselves. When the lady keeps mentioning fees, Toru mentions that there might already be a hunting quest out for the orcs, so the lady confirms that there is. The woman notices the request is just for 2 coins, so she tells him not to worry about it. Toru explains that he doesn't want the orcs killed, so he asks if they can get the quest pulled. The attendant explains that the quest was submitted by a Miss Lucia, and he's told that she doesn't seem to be at the guild at the moment. The attendant offers to speak with her next time she's in about taking down the request, so Toru thanks her and goes back to meet Date. When he approaches her, she asks him what took him so long and accuses him of leaving her alone while he was all over Ria. Toru apologizes again and asks her what drinks she'd recommend, but they're suddenly approached by another party. The leader of the party asks Date if she's Date the Wizard, and if she'd like to form a party with them. Nearby, some guys whisper about how this party is called Team Dominic, and they've been making a name for themselves. Date tells them that she's already in a party, so the team has to leave. The guys talking nearby feel Dominic has a chance, and they mention that everyone takes a shot at trying to get Date on their team at least once because of her looks and skills. They wonder who the guy sitting next to Date is, and they're surprised that he's only level 10. Meanwhile, Dawn presses her glass on Toru's face and tells him he needs to be nicer to her. Suddenly, she's approached by some guys named Ekmund and Elmer. They explain that they're elves, so it can be difficult working with humans, and suggest that they team up. However, Dawn cuts them short by explaining that she's a high elf, and there's no kinship between them. She also adds that she's currently with Toru, and grabs him. The brothers leave devastated, so Toru becomes uncomfortable and asks Date if she's feeling better. She insists she's not, and it's his fault. While she's talking, several other people show up to ask Date to form a party with them. A lot more people seem to be trying to get Date to join them. Some of the guys joke that Date has her usual talk to me and die aura, but it seems cuter recently. They wonder if Date has really partnered up with that boring nobody beside her, but they don't believe that can happen. Suddenly, a lady approaches Date again and asks if they'd like to join her party. Date tells the lady that she's not interested, so the lady frantically explains that she wouldn't dare invite Date since she's so famous, but she's referring to Toru. Toru is amused that he got invited into a party, but he soon regains his composure when he sees Date giving him the death stare. Later, the party regroups and they get a cart that will help them get to a town called Sevilda because walking there would be too much for the kids. After a few hours, they reach the town, but when Date comes down, she complains that she doesn't feel too good. Toru says it's probably because she drank so much and she got into a swaying cart. He offers to carry her on his back, but Date refuses because that's way too embarrassing. Toru tells her it's fine because Ria said the orphanage is on the outskirts of town, so they still have a long way to go. Reluctantly, she climbs on his back, and while they're walking, she thanks him. She tells him that she's not honest sometimes like she was in the pub, so Toru tells her he's like that sometimes. They soon reach the orphanage and the kids rush to welcome Ria back. Suddenly, a gloomy woman appears behind them that startles Toru. Ria identifies this person as Director Laika and tells her they just arrived, but Toru is surprised such a scary person is the director of the orphanage. Laika tells Ria that she looks well, but Toru just thinks about how Laika looks like a gangster who's here to shake down the orphanage. He decides to do a character appraisal and finds out she's a brigand, and he wonders if that's something like a bandit. Laika tells him that she stored away a bit of money and used it to start the orphanage. He wonders why she's telling him that, so she explains that he just used his character appraisal on her and says a brigand job is a subclass of thief, so she can tell when someone is using their ability. Toru tries to explain that that was not his intention, but she just laughs. He realizes he needs to be more careful about sensing abilities, but he figures that she let him see her stats because she trusts Ria. He realizes he needs to stop using his character appraisal ability on people stronger than him so he doesn't get caught again. When they enter, they tell Laika about the issue they had in the first level of the dungeon and why they brought Nick and Mary to her. Laika gladly agrees to have the kids, and she tells them they'll have lots of friends and nothing to worry about. Laika asks Ria to show them around the place, and she asks Date to rest a bit because she looks tired. When they leave, Laika says she'll assume Toru is the leader of this band, and Miri is a part of the Underworld Thieves Guild, so they agree. She says what she's about to say isn't meant for the kids to hear, so she tells them that the orphanage is in a bit of a financial mess, which is embarrassing to admit. Apparently, the support from their local lord has stopped, and now they rely on Ria's support. Although the town donates crops and Ria gives them money she makes as an adventurer, they barely make ends meet. She knows that Ria would just push herself harder to help them if she heard of this, but she wants Ria to live free of this burden, but they've been forced to rely on her. She asks Miri if the Thieves Guild will be willing to help them, since she knows how profitable illicit dealings can be, since she did her time on the wrong side of the law. Miri replies that their guild is also kind of stuck in the past and their business isn't doing well, so Laika realizes that it explains the rumors that other underworld guilds have been muscling in on them recently. However, Miri says it'll all work out because Toru here has a lot of good ideas on how to improve the business. Toru wonders what she means, so she reminds him of the urban redevelopment thing he spoke about. Laika tells them that they'd have to lean on Ria for support if they don't find a supporter, and things are more likely to go astray for Ria because of the danger of adventuring. Because of this, Toru considers using some of what he knows from Japan to help the kids. The group heads back and they ask why they're in such a hurry to go back in the cart today. Toru explains that they have to make it back to the dungeon, so Ria asks him why they're going to the dungeon today instead of stopping in the city. Date also protests that it's almost evening and she doesn't want to camp out in the dungeon, so Miri suggests they stay at her place on the first level. Toru tells her he was actually thinking of heading straight back to the apartment, so Ria tells him there's no way they'll get back to the 5th level so quickly, and Date agrees that it's dangerous to rush back. Miri wonders what they mean by an apartment, and when Toru tells them about the room with the iron door, Miri is completely lost. When they get back to the 1st level, they check out the iron door, and Miri asks what's so special about this room. Toru asks the ladies to help him move the boxes, and they soon find the door. When they find the door, they all rejoice, but Miri wonders what they're talking about since she can only see a wall. When Toru tries the lock, Ria asks if it's alright to do this in front of Miri, so he says they don't have a choice and he's sure she'll be fine. Soon after, Date and Ria enter through the wall, which shocks Miri. Toru pulls Miri in too, and she's shocked that they appear somewhere else. Date rushes to get some soda and Ria goes to run the bath. Later, Miri gets a rundown about being in a different world, and how Toru's apartment is connected to the dungeon. Miri keeps looking around, so Date tells her she can't tell anyone because this is their own little sanctuary. Miri tells them no one would believe her if she told them. Eventually Toru says the reason he asked for the room on the 1st level is so that no one would find out, so he asks her if there's a way she can ensure only they can use it. Miri says she'll talk to the boss and hide the reason, but Toru says he'll negotiate with the guild leader himself. He says he's got an idea and he still has to report back about Nick and Mary. Sometime later, they meet with the guild leader again, and Noella tells them the guild leader thanks them for seeing the kids to the orphanage. Later, Toru tells them about the issue with the orphanage and asks for the support of the Thieves Guild. He also asks if they can grant them the room with the boxes, and he says they're not asking for it for free because they'll offer something in return. When asked what they have to offer, Toru says he can only tell the leader about it and asks if they can speak privately. Noella almost rejects their offer, but Dorothea whispers to her, so she agrees and says he can speak to the leader, but she won't speak back to him. After that, the others step out so Toru can speak to the leader. When they're alone, Toru says it's obvious and pulls the curtains open. Behind the curtain, Miri tries to cover up her fake honkers, but one soon falls off. She asks him when he found out. He says he had his suspicions before, but he noticed that she's never with them when they came to speak to the leader. Also, he had suspicions about how the guild leader wouldn't speak and her interests in redevelopment. He also remembers how happy she was when he said Dorothea was pretty, but how her mood changes when he mentioned her breasts. Miri eventually admits that she's Dorothea II. Apparently Dorothea I was a legendary thief, because she had a score of lovers. She bore a child from one of them who was a beast folk, and that's how Miri was born. Dorothea continued on as a bandit for another decade, but because she had many lovers and because her child was one of the beast folk, she hid the fact that she was Miri's mother and treated her as another member of the guild. However, she passed when Miri was young, and the guild was devastated by the loss of a legendary thief. But Noella, who was close to her mother, decided to unite the guild behind Miri, the mysterious heir to the great thief's legacy. Toru wonders why she puts on such huge melons, so Miri explains that it's because her mother was known for her huge cleavage. When Toru starts to laugh, she tells him to stop laughing and get to what he wanted to talk about. She says he can use the room, but in return he has to help them expand the guild. Also, because it's not guaranteed to work, she says she wants the same consideration as Ria and Date. Toru guesses she wants free access to his apartment, so he says that's not a problem, but she can't tell anyone else. That excites Miri, who starts to undress and leans towards him, because she was referring to something else entirely. He's shocked, so she says he's taking him as a lover, and says this will also secure her lineage for the guild. Toru asks her to wait, and says he doesn't mean it that way, because Ria and Date aren't like that. Suddenly the other ladies barge in when they hear a noise to ask Toru what's wrong, but they find Miri unclad while hugging Toru. Toru tries to tell them this is not what it looks like, but Miri calls the others the former mistresses, and says she'll be joining in from now on, and she tells Noella that she won't have to worry about an heir. The other ladies ambush Toru, and he keeps trying to explain but to no avail. Sometime later when they return home, Toru tells himself that he wouldn't have spent all his time click farming levels if Ria, Date, and Miri hadn't gone back to run errands in their world. Miri had gone to work as the leader of the Thieves Guild. Date had gone to get info on the Dungeon Master, while Ria had gone to earn some money for the orphanage. Since he had nothing to do, he decided to grind his level high and surprise them when they returned. He's been able to make it all the way to level 16, and he's gained a few more skills. He heads out looking like a zombie, so Shizuku asks him if he's alright. Toru realizes he's about to break down, so he asks for Shizuku's help and she gladly obliges. When they get to the restaurant, Toru's boss notices the dark circles on his face and asks him if he's okay. Toru tells them he's feeling okay and heads into the kitchen to work, but Kuno speculates that the apartment is to blame for this. When Toru gets in, he decides to start working, but he soon finds out work has ended and everyone greets him goodbye. Confused, he wonders what happened and why he's out of his work clothes, so Kuno asks him if he's okay and why he was moving around in the kitchen in a wobbly manner. Toru realizes Shizuku must have been the one who took over for him when he dozed off. He thanks Shizuku for helping him out, but the others speculate that Toru's apartment is making him talk to himself now. The ladies whisper to themselves, so Tachishi tells Kuno she'll go home and make preparations. When she leaves, Kuno asks Toru to walk home with her, so he realizes she's worried about him. He tells her he'll be fine on his own, but she refuses and drags him out. When they're outside, he asks her where they're going, so she says they're going to the temple. She says she's certain his apartment is haunted and he's under a curse, so Toru tries to explain there are no ghosts in his apartment. Regardless, she insists she's going to take him to get cleansed or exorcised. Toru asks her if an exorcism isn't expensive, so she tells him not to worry because Tachiishi said she'll do it for free. Toru wonders why a regular high school student like Tachiishi is capable of performing an exorcism, so she tells him that Tachiishi is a temple-born maiden. That surprises Toru, so Kuno tells her that Tachiishi has amazing spirit senses among many other things. When they get there, they find Tachiishi pouring water all over herself. Tachiishi tells Toru that he'll be in grave danger if this goes on, so she leads them into the temple. When inside, Toru apologizes to Tachiishi because she's done all this preparation over a misunderstanding. He says what he was doing was dangerous, but he was pulling too many all-nighters, and Tachiishi confirms that he's truly haunted by ghosts. Kuno asks her if she has proof of ghostly influence, so Tachiishi brings up the instance when a suspicious man in a mask, hat, and sunglasses ate at the diner and complimented Toru. Tachiishi says that man or thing is not of this world, and that surprises Kuno. Toru wonders what she's going on about since the mysterious man was him in sunglasses, and the chef was Shizuku. Tachiishi says the man was a ghost, but Toru figures that Tachiishi has zero spiritual perception even though she's temple-born. However, Tachiishi says she's going to his house to exorcise the ghost. Toru tries to stop her, but she tells him not to worry because she's temple-born. Shortly after, they reach his apartment. While outside, Tachiishi says she senses an unpleasant presence, and when she tries to go in, Toru suggests he tidies up the place first. Kuno jokes that he's a single guy living alone, so Tachiishi agrees. When Toru enters, he notices the lights on, so he wonders if he forgot to turn them off. When he enters, he finds Deet sleeping on his bed, and she welcomes him back when she sees him. He asks her what she's doing here, so she asks him what's wrong. She reminds him that his room is connected to several places in the underworld, which now include a door in the first level and another in the second level. He asks her why she's drinking and sleeping in his bed, so she hugs him and tells him she's here to pay him a visit and asks him if he wasn't lonely without her. Suddenly, they hear a knock on the door and the ladies ask him if he's done, and say they think they hear someone's voice in the apartment. Deet asks who's at the door, so Toru asks her to go into the tatami room and hide in the closet because his co-workers are coming over. Deet offers to say hello to them, so he pushes her away and reminds her that there are no elves in Japan. When he pushes her into the closet, she tries to tell him that Ria is also in the apartment, but he locks the door before she can complete her statement. The ladies outside call Toru, so he rushes to let them in. While they're inside, he serves them tea, and Kuno admits that the apartment looks pretty normal. When Kuno asks how it is, Toru says it's pretty normal, but Tachiishi remains alert and says she can feel evil here. She asks Toru what's in the room over in his tatami room, so she says she's going to check it because she senses evil in that direction. Toru blocks her and says she can't, so she asks him why he's stopping her since she's trying to help, but he tells her she can't go in there. Tachiishi insists that she can feel the evil in his closet, so she asks Kuno to help move Toru out of the way. The ladies soon try to push him, but they're unable to move him, so Toru realizes all his leveling up is working. He considers pushing them to the front door, but Ria soon steps out of the bath after having her bath. Shocked, Toru asks Ria why she's here too. The ladies notice Ria, so Deet steps out and says she was trying to tell him. This shocks the ladies, so they wonder why there's another gorgeous ghost girl there. Eventually, they all sit at the table, so Toru introduces Tachiishi and Kuno to the ladies, and he introduces Ria and Deet too. Luckily, Deet covers her ears with her hair, so Kuno asks what country these girls are from and who they are to him. She asks him if he's smuggling foreign girls for terrible reasons, so he insists he's not. He lies that they're from Romania, and he says they're here to learn about Japanese culture. He also lies that gym shorts are popular with girls in Romania, so Tachiishi seems to accept the explanation. Toru is shocked they bought it, but Ria soon asks the ladies why they're here. Tachiishi explains that they're here to exorcise the ghosts haunting the apartment, and she says she still senses an evil coming from the closet. Toru immediately stops her because he can't let her find his forbidden tomes. Kuno asks him why he won't let them go in there, so he admits there's something immoral in there, but it's a perfectly healthy kind of evil. Ria realizes Toru's forbidden tomes are in the closet, so Deet gets tired and comes out to show them the magazines that Toru has been hiding, and tells them there are no ghosts there. The ladies are shocked, but Toru almost enters the ground. Eventually, he forces his co-workers outside and finally heaves a sigh. When he enters, Ria ambushes him with a deadly aura and asks him if he'd mind explaining this forbidden tome to her as well. The next day after work, Toru's boss commends everyone and tells Toru it's good to see him back to normal. Toru apologizes to Kuno for kicking her out, but Kuno jokingly apologizes for barging in on him. She jokes that she now knows he's not getting any sleep because of those beauties he has around. She adds that with 2 female rivals that beautiful Tachiyoshi has her work cut out for her, but Toru doesn't know what she's talking about. Toru asks where Tachiyoshi is, so he's told she caught a cold, and he realizes it's probably because of all the water she poured on herself. Toru hopes it doesn't get bad, so Kuno gets an idea and asks Toru to send a message if he's worried. She offers to give him Tachiyoshi's contact info and tells him to ensure he gets in contact with her. When Toru gets back home, Ria welcomes him so he greets her and refers to her as Shizuku. Shizuku is shocked and asks him how he knows she was the one. Toru tells her she looked like Ria but didn't act like her. Then he asks her why she transformed into Ria. Shizuku explains that Ria and Dite went to the other world this morning, so he turned into Ria so he doesn't get lonely. She wonders if she should have transformed into Lady Deed or Miri instead, so Toru tells her he appreciates the effort, but he wouldn't get lonely since he has Shizuku around. Shizuku is touched that her master likes her just the way she is, but she tells him that she wants to use her transformation to help him, so she asks him if there's anything in particular he'd like her to transform into. After giving it some thought, Toru suggests she transforms into Kokorone Miru, the Deviroid character he always watches on his computer. Toru says it's okay if it's too hard, but Shizuku says she can because she's seen her figures in his secret magazines. Kokorone is in. That shocks Toru, but Shizuku soon transforms into Kokorone. Toru tells her it's perfect, and she's put famous cosplayers to shame. Since Toru got them a food called takoyaki, Shizuku picks one of them and tries to feed him. Toru is uncomfortable at first, but she insists since he's always feeding her. When he receives the food, Shizuku tells him he has some sauce on his lips, so she picks it up with her finger and tastes it. Tro realizes Shizuku is so cute and he relates to why people do dirty stuff with white slimes. Eventually, he feeds her too, and they have a good time. After they're done, Toru heads out to take a bath. Shizuku asks him if she can join him, so he agrees. Before they enter, Toru asks her if she plans to bathe in human form, so she tells him not to worry because she'll transform so it looks like her clothes are off. Toru refuses because she'd just be naked then, but Shizuku explains that she's pretty much always naked even in this form. Regardless, Toru refuses, so Shizuku asks him what the problem is. Toru eventually tells her that Kokorone looks great, but he likes how cute she looks as a regular slime, so he suggests she only turns into Kokorone when he needs her in humanoid form. She realizes he likes her how she usually is, so she transforms back into her usual form and they go into the bath. When they're done, Toru comes back to level up, but he notices he's not leveling up much anymore. Meanwhile, Shizuku tries to dry him up so he doesn't end up catching a cold. Because of that, Toru remembers Tachiyoshi's cold, so Shizuku suggests he tries contacting her. Since Kuno gave him her number, he decides to send a message to apologize for kicking her out the day before. He wonders if she'll reply since she always acts cold towards him, but he suddenly gets a reply from her, where she apologizes for barging in the way she did, and asks if she was a bother. Toru tells her she wasn't, which makes her relieved. It surprises her when she uses emojis with him, and she soon asks him how long the Romanian girls are staying with him. Toru tells her they left this morning, so Tachiyoshi tells her she's heading out in that case. He wonders where she's going to, so he tells her to wear warm clothing so she doesn't get sicker, and she agrees. He figures that she's going to the hospital or the drugstore. Later he remembers Shizuku just told him that he chats with Tachiyoshi when he takes his form at work. Toru asks her what they talk about, so she says they mostly talk about work, and they also shared love advice. That shocks Toru, but he soon hears his doorbell ring, and he finds Tachiyoshi there. He's surprised to see her and asks about her cold, so she texts him not to worry because it's mind over matter, then walks in without asking. Later he offers her some morning tea, and she accepts, still carrying her cold demeanor. Finally, Toru sits and asks her if she's keeping warm, but she just replies with a yes, which makes him uncomfortable. Eventually he informs her it's already 10 at night, so he asks her why she's here, but she just says yes too. He asks her if her parents are fine with her being out, so she just says yes again. Eventually an awkward silence lingers, so he asks if her parents aren't worried about her being out, so she says no. After thinking about it, he asks her why her parents aren't worried, so she says yes. Toru soon gets uncomfortable because it feels like he's talking to a game NPC, and he wonders what's changed since she was a bit more talkative the day before. He knows she can hear him, but Shizuku soon whispers to him that it's possible Tachiyoshi is so nervous that she can't speak. Shizuku suggests they try talking over the chat app, so Toru gives it a shot. He texts her to ask if she's nervous by any chance, so she texts back that being alone with him is embarrassing. Surprised, he reminds her that she was talking a lot yesterday, so she texts back to say Kuno was with her yesterday. Because of that, he suggests she keeps talking through the chat app in that case, and that excites her, and she thanks him over chat. Toru realizes she gives a different vibe over text, He eventually thanks her for coming over to exercise his place the day before, but she texts him back that she ended up causing him grief because of a misunderstanding. He tells her it's fine and she doesn't need to worry, but he also wonders why she went out of her way to do all that, and he figures it may be some sense of duty as a temple girl. Eventually he asks her what brought her here today, so she says she wanted to come see him again since the pair from Romania left. Even though he said they were on homestay, she asks him to please tell her if he's letting other girls into his house. Toru wonders why he'd have to tell her a girl's staying at his place, so he heads out to do something. He goes to meet Shizuku to ask about the love advice she's been giving Tachishi, and asks what she remembers in detail. Shizuku uses her shapeshifting to do an instant replay of the conversations. In the replay, Shizuku controls Toru's body to go on break. During break, Tachi sits next to him, and Shizuku notices she seems down and asks her what's wrong. He tells her that talking might ease her mind if something is troubling her, so she tells him she had a crush. She says she knows this person will never notice her, and she worries that she's not attractive enough. Shizuku tells her that's not true because she's quite pretty, a diligent worker, and she's attractive. That stuns Tachi, and Toru is glad that Shizuku said something like that to cheer her up. After that, she asks him if he would be able to fall in love with her in that case, so Shizuku tells her that she loves her with Toru's body. Toru is shocked by the development, and he sees Tachi's eyes light up. He realizes that this explains a lot, and figures that Tachi thinks they're dating. Shizuku apologizes because this is her fault, so Toru tells her it's not because she was just trying her best to fill in for him. He decides that he has to clear up the misunderstanding, but when he gets to the room he notices Tachi is burning up because she hasn't recovered from her cold. She says she's fine, but he decides he can't leave her here because of her fever. He carries her towards his bed, and that shocks her. Suddenly, he receives a text from her about how assertive he is to carry her to bed, and Toru realizes she's thinking about something else. When he drops her, she texts him to be gentle with her because it's her first time, but Toru tells her to stop and rest. After giving her a hot towel, he decides to look around to see if he has any medicine. He finds the ancient flower that the adventurers gave him, and he remembers that he was told it's used to make medicine. Since he's got nothing to lose, he decides to boil it and have her drink it. He soon returns with it and gives Tachishi, but she asks him to call her Ayame instead. He reluctantly agrees, and feeds her the potion. When she drinks it, she texts him that the medicine is super effective, and he notices her fever is gone. Suddenly she texts him he can keep calling her by her first name, Ayame, since they're dating now. Eventually Toru clears up the misunderstanding with her, and that makes Tachishi tense up. She receives his explanation and soon gets up to leave. Toru offers to walk her home since it's late, but Tachishi refuses and tells him she'll be fine on her own. He feels bad for what he's done, but he soon realizes that the door she's heading towards leads to the dungeon, unless she has the key. He rushes to stop her, but she soon enters the dungeon, where she's ambushed by a huge rat. Toru rushes to push her out of the way, but the rat slashes his back with its claws. He quickly crushes the rat with his pickaxe. After he kills it, he helps Tachishi back in and she starts to cry. He tells her everything is okay, but she tells him he's hurt. He tells her it's just a scratch, but he soon starts to bleed profusely until he collapses. Toru notices he's leveled up, but his defense power didn't increase. Shizuku soon rushes in to help Toru, causing Tachishi to jump back. Toru assures her that Shizuku is a friend, so Shizuku tells Tachishi to get Toru to the bed. After she helps him get into bed, Shizuku tells her to get the medicine from the kitchen so they can disinfect his wound. She soon returns with the water from the ancient flower and smears it on his wound, so Shizuku sticks to the wound to stop it from bleeding. While that's going on, Tachishi becomes worried and grabs Toru's hand and hopes he gets better. When Shizuku notices this is helping Toru, she asks Tachishi to keep holding his hand, and Toru soon comes back to. When he gets back up, Tachishi grabs onto him and expresses her gratitude that he's fine. Toru thanks her, so she asks him if he can explain all that's going on. He soon explains the whole thing about the dungeon and the other world, and Tachishi soon learns that the person she spoke to during her shift was Shizuku. When she gets up, Shizuku apologizes for making the mistake, but Toru says it's his fault for pulling an all-nighter and falling asleep. Tachishi gets up looking gloomy and attempts to open the door again, but Toru stops her so she doesn't end up in the dungeon, so he uses the key to get her out onto the hallway. When Toru returns, he mentions that Tachishi probably hates him now since he basically deceived her. The next morning, Toru hears his doorbell ring. When he goes to check, it turns out to be Tachishi, who enters without asking as usual. Confused, Toru asks her if she forgot something, because he knows she left angry the night before. She texts him that she's still angry, since she wound up confessing her feelings to Shizuku, but he's the one who cured her cold and risked his life to protect her. He eventually asks her why she's here so early, so she tells him she's here to nurse him since it's her fault that he's hurt. She asks him if his friends from the other world would be back soon, so when he says they will, she says it gives her more incentive not to give up. She asks him to let her help him in his otherworldly adventure. Later, Toru goes back into the dungeon to drop some cat food as bait again. For some reason, he can't level up after getting to level 17, and he wonders if it's because he needs a lot of experience points. After he lays down the bait, he enters his apartment to tell Tachishi. She texts him to welcome him back and he finds her clicking on the computer. She tells him she's leveled up again, so he tells her that's great. Surprisingly, her class stats say she's a priest, so she was able to use her healing magic to get rid of the scars on his back and the pain. Later she texts him to ask if she can come with him to the other world, since she's leveled up, and Toru starts to stutter. When he told her he's going to return to the Adventurers Guild to check in the quest about Inami, she insisted she'd follow him to the other world. Eventually he's forced to concede to her request, which makes her happy. Sometime later they both go through the door that leads to the first floor, and when Toru greets the guy in the room he almost dies due to shock. The guy identifies Toru and says Noella told him about him, so Toru says the password to confirm he's the one. The guy wonders where Toru came from since he can't see the door, but soon remembers he's not supposed to ask. The guy asks who the woman is, so Toru says she's a friend of his. The guy asks him if he's off to see Noella, and when he confirms, the guy gives Tachishi a cloth to cover her hair because women shouldn't be seen wandering around here exposed. After they leave the room, Toru tells Tachishi they'll stop at the Thieves Guild before entering the town. He notices she's been very quiet since they got here, so he asks if she's freaked out. She shows him the messages she sent to him about how she hates the stinky hood given to her, so he realizes she's quiet because her phone doesn't have any reception. When they get to Noella, they discuss some of the plans to renovate the Thieves Guild from what's done in Japan. Noella tells him she'd like to pick a good renovation site, and she says he will provide her with the map of the first level later, and asks him for his consultation. He tells her it'll be his pleasure, but Tachishi shows her screen where she typed that act so competently. That surprises him, so he later asks Noella if Miri is around, and he's told she's surveying possible renovation sites. Moments later, Tachishi types that he's so cool, so Toru quickly asks for permission to excuse themselves, and he asks Noella to send his regards to Miri. Later they head out to the city, and Tachishi types that the city is quite beautiful. She types that the people are dressed authentically, and everything looks fun. Her phone soon dies, so when Toru asks if it's dead, she says yes. Toru says it's perfect timing because they need to make a stopover at the temple. When they're inside, Tachi asks him what this common tongue thing is, so he tells her it's a skill that helps her communicate through telepathy. She laments that she won't be able to use emojis, so he tells her she can just convey her thoughts well without using her smartphone. She explains that not using emojis makes people think she's scary, so Toru tells her not to worry because he already knows she's a kind person, and that surprises her. After receiving the common tongue blessing, they head to the guild, and Tachi asks him why he's planning to get a high school girl like her drunk just because they're in another world. He tells her this isn't just a tavern, but the Adventurers Guild, so he asks her to wait somewhere while he makes an inquiry. When she's served a drink, she admits that she knew he was trying to get her drunk, but when she drinks it, she shouts that this is just water. Toru goes to check with the attendant, and he learns that Inami still hasn't been caught. Apparently people have reported seeing him, which means he's not been killed, so he decides to still chill out. However, he wonders where Inami is and what he's doing. Suddenly he notices a crowd around Tachi and wonders what's going on. When he approaches her, the guys ask Toru if Tachi is his party mate, so he says she is. The guys are surprised that a rare priest adventurer is traveling with a skill level 17 adventurer. The guys say they're planning a monster hunt that will be worth his while, so they suggest Toru and Tachishi tag along. Several other guys ambush them to ask if they'd like to join their party, so Toru doesn't know what to say. When one guy touches Tachishi to ask if she'd like to join their party, she glares at him with the death stare, so the other guys quickly run back when they realize she might be deadly. Toru realizes that Tachishi's death stare is worse than Dat's. While he chats with Tachishi, Toru notices the girl who asked him to join her party before begging some other guy to join their party. The guy she's speaking to says he understands, but the reward she's offering isn't great. She begs him to reconsider, but he tells her to ask someone else because he can't risk his life against a death grizzly for little money. Toru realizes a death grizzly must be dangerous, but the girl recognizes him again and comes to beg him to help save her village. He's shocked, but he decides to hear her out. Apparently the girl's name is Moran, and she's from a pioneer village near the city. Since they cleared a spot in the forest to build the village, they occasionally get attacked by forest monsters, and the worst of them, the death grizzly, has started to show up often. She says she's filed for a slaying quest at the guild, but no one has accepted it, which is why she's been trying to ask adventurers in person. Tsubai realizes the death grizzly must be really deadly, so Marin asks him if he'd accept her request, since she's certain the famous Miss Deet could kill a death grizzly with a single blow. Tsubai explains that he's not with Deet today, so the lady asks him if he can do it. He tells her he can't because he's not as strong as Deet. Marin says he was level 10 the last time she saw him, but now he's at level 17, which means he's seen a lot of tough battles. Toru knows the only tough thing he's done is click his mouse, but Marin is certain he can take down a death grizzly. However, when she becomes uncertain, Toru suggests she ask someone else, but Tachishi says they should head to her village immediately. Tachishi tells Marin that they'll come because Toru can take care of the monster easily, but Toru asks her what on earth she's talking about. Tachishi explains that Toru defeated a monster with one blow and saved her, which amazes Marin, but Toru realizes Tachishi doesn't know the difference between a rat and a bear. Eventually Toru's left with no choice but to follow Marin to her village. She shows him a well that the death grizzly rammed through, and she tells everyone she's brought adventurers to help. She tells everyone that Toru and Tachishi said they'll slay the monster for them, and as if things can't turn out worse, the bear appears behind Toru. Shocked, Toru rushes towards the monster to attack it, and someone gets slashed. Turns out that the grizzly was taken down, so the people have a feast to celebrate. Marin gives Toru some of the grilled meat of the bear, and she's amazed that he was able to beat the grizzly in one hit. Toru is equally surprised because he wasn't only able to take it down in one hit, but he was able to clearly see the monster's attack and was able to quickly move out of the way because his agility stats have increased. He was unable to confirm with the giant rat because he was focused on protecting Tachishi, but he's shocked that he's gotten so much stronger. Tachishi soon shows up and says she needs to work on leveling up herself. So Toru asks her if she wants to be able to fight monsters too. However, she says she wants to level up because she's going to be his healer. So Toru says they'll get back to some clicking when they get back home. Sometime later, Toru meets with the other ladies in the apartment to discuss the plans for the reconstruction area. Miri tells him that they've been working with his plans. She says they've relocated the rundown barracks and shops, so the area's pretty orderly. She says her guild members are also cleaning up so security and sanitation are on a high level. However, she says that the issue is getting people there. Even though they can tell people it's safer and cleaner now, that wouldn't change anything unless they actually show up. Deity suggests they build some big shops if they have more land, just like the Tachikawa department stores with several shops inside that Toru had recommended. Miri says they'd like to do that, but they lack the funding, because it'll cost a lot. Toru says he asks Noella to approach companies on the surface about investing in order to secure some funding. However, there hasn't been any favorable response so far. He tells them about the one spot that didn't close the door on them, called the Fulborem Company, but adds that they said they can't invest unless the area can actually draw customers. It's clear the Fulborem Company will most likely invest if they can draw customers, but they're in an awkward spot because they'd have to build a department store first to attract customers. Eventually, Miri suggests they just sell them some stuff from Japan to get business going, but Toru refuses so people don't get suspicious and start poking around to get to the apartment. While they're thinking of another way, Ria's stomach suddenly growls, so they decide to go on a break and Toru goes into the kitchen to prepare a Hamburg steak. When he steps out, he notices a lot of people moving around, but he notices them dressed differently, so he gets an idea. He rushes in to tell the others he has a great idea, so he suggests they head out together. That evening they go into the crowded street, so Deet asks him if there's a festival going on because of the number of people moving around. Toru tells them it's called Anichi Temple Festival Day, and Miri notices they're selling all sorts of good-looking food. Toru admits that festival day and food stalls go hand in hand, and Deet notices that the people are still many, even though the cluster of tents is way smaller than department stores. Toru suggests they walk around and try anything that catches their fancy, so they all go around and try various foods they enjoy. When they return to the Thieves Guild, Toru shows Noella a video of how the festival in his world went. He suggests that the guild could prepare shops like these, which is basically just a collection of tents, and he says they can substitute them with things from his world, since festivals usually serve things out of the ordinary. Noella agrees that this can help attract a lot of people to their renovation zone, and Miri agrees that this might help companies invest in them. Toru suggests they list out things the stalls should sell, so Ria mentions candy apples. Deet mentions crepes, and they soon list out a few other things. When Miri suggests the goldfish scoop she tasted at the festival, Ria reminds her that goldfish only exist in Japan, and Deet adds that only a handful of noblemen keep pets. Regardless, Miri says it's so fun and she guarantees that goldfish scooping will draw customers. However, Toru asks her if they have any shiny fish they can use as a substitute, since there are no goldfish in this world. So she says there's the rainbow fish. She explains that they eat anything, they don't die easily, and they look beautiful. Toru asks her where these rainbow fishes are, so she says she doesn't know. Deet tells her that rainbow fish are on the 7th level of the dungeon, which shocks her. Toru guesses that the 7th level of the dungeon must be more dangerous than the 5th, and Deet agrees. However, when Miri starts crying and activates her googly eyes, eventually Toru asks Deet if it'll still be dangerous if the 4 of them went, so Deet says the 4 of them can manage it if they tread carefully. That excites Miri, so they decide to go there. Soon enough they reach the 5th level, and encounter dangerous mushroom monsters. Miri slices them in a jiffy, and she says it feels good to make it all the way to level 5. When Toru asks, Toru explains that level 7 consists of a huge underground lake, with a few islands scattered across it, and the rainbow fish dwells around one of those islands. He asks about what the 6th level is like, so he's told that he needs to be more careful on the 6th level than on the 7th. He wonders why, so Daitet explains that level 6 is a den for smart monsters like goblins, kobolds, and orcs, who gather in packs. This makes Ria uncomfortable, and Toru wonders if Anami is with the orcs. Daitet explains that it's important that they don't run into any monsters in level 6, because the monsters call for reinforcement, and they'll end up fighting forever. Toru wonders if this was a good idea after all. So Daitet tells him that each group of monsters has its own turf, and they rarely step outside of it. She says it shouldn't be too risky as long as they don't go deep into any of their territories or attack them. They keep moving until they reach the entrance of the 6th level, so Daitet advises everyone to keep all combat to a minimum. She asks Miri to let them know if she senses any enemy with her thief detector skill. It's unbelievable that these guys are risking their lives over fish. Deet also tells Ria to quickly slay any monster they encounter before they can call for help, and she tells the others that they have to run if any monster successfully calls for help, and she tells Toru he'd have to ditch his bag. They go down the entrance into the 6th level, so Deet announces that they're on the orcs' turf, and this is the safest route she knows they can go through. Toru asks why they aren't going with the goblins, since orcs are the strongest of the 3 races, but Deet explains that there aren't many orcs, so the encounter rate is slow, and they're easy to deal with since they move in pairs. Suddenly, Miri senses something and she tells them a pack of 10 is heading towards them. Toru reminds Deet she just said they travel in pairs, so Miri says they sound small, so she thinks they're goblins. Didit admits it's a big group, so she suggests they hide in a safe place and wait for them to pass. While they're hiding, the goblins make their way forward, and Toru wonders why goblins are in the turf of the orcs. Suddenly, Toru feels someone with huge strength just hugging him, and he becomes terrified. Judging from the size, he figures it's Det, so he guesses she's holding him so tightly because she's scared. He can hear her panting, which makes him feel weird. Meanwhile, the other ladies keep watching till the goblins are out of sight. Date says that the goblins aren't so strong, but trying to slay 10 of them before they have a chance to call for backup would be very difficult. She also wonders why the goblins are in orc turf, since both races rarely get along. Meanwhile, Toru realizes the ladies are on the other side, so he wonders who on earth is rubbing against him. When he looks to his side, he's shocked to see a female orc, so he screams at the top of his lungs. Ria jumps in front of him to protect him, but the female orc asks Toru if he's Japanese. Miri and orc jump towards the orc to slay it before it can call for help, but Toru jumps in front of the orc and tells them to stop. Ria asks him why he's stopping them, so he tells them that this orc might have information about Anami. Meanwhile, the goblins hear voices coming from nearby, and Miri senses them coming back. Deet becomes worried that they have no choice but to fight, so the female orc tells them to follow her. She triggers a hidden door, so Toru tells them to follow her. Deet wonders if it's safe, but Toru tells them they don't have any choice for now. They pass through the secret door, and when the goblins arrive, they don't see anyone. While inside the secret room with the orc, Toru thanks the orc and asks her why she saved them in the first place. She says it's because he's just like Anami, so he confirms that she knows about Anami. However, Traya and the ladies become defensive that the orc knowing about Anami doesn't mean she's safe, and they speculate they might be holding Anami prisoner or might have killed him. The orc explains that they would never do that, so Toru asks her where Anami is. When she realizes Toru wants to see Anami, she offers to take him to where he is. Deet asks Toru if they're really going to follow this orc, so Toru says they have to if they want to find Anami. Deet asks Toru if it makes sense to trust her, so he says he thinks they can. When Toru goes after the orc, Ria decides to follow him, so she can protect him, and the others join in too. They keep following the orc until they reach another room where she asks them to wait. Toru looks around and sees several orcs going about their daily lives, so he wonders if this is an orc village. Soon after, she brings Anami to come see them. Toru is surprised to see Anami, but he's also glad he's safe. Anami tells him he's glad to see him again. Anami asks him if he's finally bought a TV and is ready to sign his license contract, but Toru tells him he's in another world, and they came to rescue him. Anami tells them he was joking, and he's well aware he's in another world. However, he wonders what they mean by rescuing him, so Toru explains that the orcs must have taken him prisoner. Anami explains that he's not a prisoner, and the orcs are very friendly, but Dedit says that can't be true because orcs are known for being extremely dangerous. Because of that, Anami asks Det if she's ever heard of an orc attacking a human in this dungeon, and the question surprises her. Dedit turns to Ria to ask if it's happened before, but Ria says that she's only heard of damage caused by the orcs who stay in the forest, but she's not heard of any from those in the dungeon. Miri also confirms that she's never heard of anyone being attacked by an orc here. Eventually, Deet mentions that the hunting quest put up for Anami was because the adventurer mistook Anami for an orc, while Anami was trying to force him to get a TV license contract. Since most people try to steer clear of orcs on the 6th level, they've never confirmed this story or tried to capture Anami. Eventually, Anami explains that the orcs are vegetarians, so they don't have a reason to attack humans. That surprises the others, so Anami explains that the orcs here follow the teachings of their deity, run by the wicked lord, so they all avoid eating meat. He says the fact that he's alive is proof of this, so Toru asks him if he doesn't want to come back to Japan. Anami says he doesn't want to, so Toru asks him why. Anami explains that he's getting married soon, which shocks Toru. Anami explains that he's getting married to the lucky orc who brought them to this village, so the orc introduces herself as Francoise. Although he's pretty confused, Toru congratulates them and the other ladies realize they almost killed Anami's fiancé. Eventually, Anami asks them to come into the village because the elder wants to meet them. He also asks Francoise to head back home and get things ready for their guests. Deet wonders if it's safe to follow, so Toru says he doubts it's a trap, since the orc got them out of trouble, and Anami is safe. They soon enter the village, and when Toru asks if they're at the elder's house, Anami tells him that it's the orc's sumo arena. Toru can't believe what he heard, so Anami says he'll show him later. They soon reach the elder's house, and Toru notices the house doesn't look much different from the other houses. Anami explains that even the important orcs stay equal because they like to keep things simple. Anami asks them to hear what the elder has to say, so the elder welcomes them. He tells them he's heard that they're Anami's friends, and when they say they are, the elder figures they must already know they don't attack people. He asks the humans to stop attacking them, so Toru explains that they have no plans to attack them. The elder also says they hate one more thing, and when Toru asks what it is, the elder says the orcs are usually accused of doing bad things to lady knights by forcing themselves on humans. The elder says they don't do any of that, so Toru tells him they understand. The leader asks him to pass on the information to the other humans, so Toru tries to explain that human society is complicated, and they can't make it happen immediately. The elder admits that Anami had told him the same thing, so Toru promises to spread the word slowly that the orcs in the dungeon aren't a threat. The elder thanks them and asks them to go rest. Anami takes the party to his house, and when he gets home, several female orcs welcome him. Surprised, Toru asks who these ladies are, so Anami introduces them as Catherine, Lola, Jacqueline and Francoise, who he'll be marrying soon. He says they're all his wives, and Toru realizes he can't tell them apart. Anami jokes that orcs are polygamists, so he has a virtual harem, so he asks Toru if he's jealous. While Toru is still stunned, Anami introduces Toru to them, so the ladies approach Toru and they say he looks just like Anami. Suddenly the other ladies ambush Toru and they insist that Toru is nothing like Anami, because he's far more handsome. Anami laughs that he's obviously hot by orc standards, so he asks Toru if he wants to live with them. Toru says he'll pass, and Anami laughs that it's a bummer. Eventually, Anami asks him to stay the night because he's going to be preparing some chanko nabe for dinner, and the ladies celebrate because they like the dish. Because his house is too small to contain everyone, he suggests they go eat at the training grounds. While they're going, Toru asks if the chanko nabe is going to have just vegetables, since everyone here is vegetarian. Anami explains that they don't touch mammal meat, but fish is fine. Intrigued, Toru asks him where they were able to get vegetables and fish in the dungeon, so Anami explains that the level below has a lake with islands. Apparently they grow vegetables there and they grow quite well, which may be due to the dungeon's magic. They soon enter the sumo ring that Anami mentions. Anami admits that he was equally surprised, but he learns that orcs have a cultural practice that's identical to sumo. Since he's a former sumo wrestler, he was able to get along with everyone right away. Anami soon drops the box and starts preparing with the help of his wives. Intrigued, Toru asks Anami if he only uses salt as seasoning, so he says he does because the fish makes for a very good broth. When Toru notices the unusual color of the fish, Miri jumps in and is awestruck by the sight. She says these are the rainbow fish they came to get, and when she starts to cry when he slices them up, Anami tells her not to worry because they can always fish for more. When food is served, Toru tastes it and it turns out delicious, and the other ladies agree. Shortly after, one of the wives brings steamed island potatoes that they grow on the level below. While Dee enjoys the delicious meal, she wishes she had some alcohol to go with it, so Anami gives her an alcohol called shochu from the island potatoes. Excited, she takes it and it turns out nice. While they're chatting, Toru considers that he never thought he could have so much fun in a dungeon. Later that evening, Anami privately asks Toru what he thinks of the orcs, so Toru admits that they're nice. Toru adds that it seems that there are fewer male orcs than females and children, so Anami says the orcs are warring with the goblins on level 6. He admits that it has greatly diminished the number of male orcs. In the past, the orcs were never overrun by the goblins, but lately the goblins have started using poison blow darts and other weapons, so the orcs have been losing ground. Toru realizes this is why they encountered a pack of goblins in orc territory, and he realizes this battle with the goblins is why the elder wants to try to patch things up with the humans. Toru asks Anami if he doesn't think he should get out of here and come back to their world, so Anami asks him if he'd leave his wife behind and run, if he were in his shoes. Anami laughs and says he plans to live and be buried here. Eventually Toru asks Anami if he ate the brown grains on level 5, so Anami says he ate the tasty seeds that were on the ground where they met. Toru tells him they weren't plant seeds but were pet food, so it was meat. Anami becomes terrified, and he wonders how he's going to make it to Lord Ruin. The next morning, Miri and Deet have a hangover after drinking way too much the night before. Ria wonders how they're going to explore the rainbow fish now when they're both knocked out. However, Toru says they can just go back home till everyone is fine. Dendov asks him why they'll go back since they came this far, so Ria asks him if they're giving up on the rainbow fish. Toru says they are, but says he needs to chat with the elder first. When Anami and the elder come to greet them, Toru tells the elder he'd like to speak with him. He asks the elder if he'd like to get on good terms with the humans, so he tells him he has an idea and suggests they make contact with the humans. Toru says they should barter with the humans, so the elder asks him what that means. He explains that it means to trade between the Orc village and the Thieves Guild. Miri, who's also in the room, wonders what he means, so Toru explains that he was told that the orcs are at war with the goblins, and they must be running short on supplies. The elder admits they are, but Miri replies that the orcs don't have anything they want. Turo reminds her that they have rainbow fish, and they also have good liquor and island potatoes. Since they'll need the rainbow fish in the future, Turo tells the others that it'll be rough if they have to go to the 7th level every time they need more. Even though it's going to be hard to clear up the misunderstanding between humans and orcs, Turo believes it can lead to interaction when people get to know that working with orcs is profitable. The leader agrees, so Miri decides to give it a shot. Later, Anami comes to thank Turo for his help, despite him causing him nothing but trouble in return. Sometime later, Tachishi demands to know why Toru won't take her with him into the dungeon. Toru explains that the lower levels are too dangerous for low-level adventurers like her. After they parted ways with Anami, they left the rainbow fish issue in the hands of the orcs, so everyone split up and started to work on the plans for the festival day in the redevelopment area. In the present, Tachishi asks Toru if she can come over to his house to increase her level since he won't let her into the dungeon. Since everyone is in the other world working on the redevelopment, Toru reluctantly agrees, and Tachishi says she'll come over that night. When Toru gets back home, Deet welcomes him back, and he's surprised to see her. She asks him if he has a problem with her coming back to the apartment, so he says he doesn't, but he thought she was in the dungeon. He asks her if she's spending time with Shizuku, so she says Shizuku isn't here. Toru wonders why, so Date starts to panic and says it's because she won one at rock paper scissors. Later, she says she's kidding and says Shizuku followed Ria to help set up the redevelopment area. Since they're alone, Toru asks Date what she'd like to eat, but he notices that she'd already brought out ingredients to cook. He asks her if she was planning to cook something, so she asks him if he has a problem with that. He says he doesn't, so she proceeds to make food for the both of them. Toru tells her he can't wait to taste her homemade cooking, but he's actually worried because he doesn't know if she can cook. When he goes to his computer, he sees she opened a recipe website. Shortly after, the food is ready, so she asks him to dig in. Toru carefully tastes it, but it turns out to be delicious. Deet asks if that's true or if he's just saying that, so he tells her it's actually great. Toru realizes it must have been difficult for her to reproduce Japanese cooking so well since she's from another world. He tells her she's amazing, so she laughs and says she knows. When he's done, he thanks her for the meal and tells her he's going to bathe after washing the plates. On his way in, she grabs him, so he asks her if she wants to go first. She says she doesn't, and asks if they can go together. When Toru becomes uncomfortable, she reminds him that he bathes with Shizuku all the time. He's initially uncomfortable, but she forces her way in and enters in a swimsuit. When she notices him crying, she asks why. But Toru, who had been secretly expecting her to come in naked, says they're tears of happiness. When she starts bathing, Toru realizes this is terrible, since he's not wearing a swimsuit and the bath powder and water is all that's masking his nakedness. She soon enters the water, and says she knows they both feel uncomfortable even though they're both wearing swimsuits. Toru realizes she thinks he's wearing a trunk, and after some silence, she asks him what he usually does when he bathes with Shizuku. Toru says she helps him wash, and hugs him while they soak in the tub. Immediately, Deet jumps on him and presses his face into her chest so she can hug him like Shizuku does. She's glad to finally have some alone time with him, and she says this is the least she can do. Turo doesn't know what she's talking about, but this feels so good, so he's going to let her do whatever she wants. Suddenly, she notices there's something hitting her thighs, and she wonders if it's what she thinks it is. She soon rushes out screaming, and she asks him why he wasn't wearing a swimsuit. Turo apologizes even though she's being unreasonable. She later asks him if he thought she'd go in naked, and when he says yes, she asks him if he'd like to go in again without bathing suits. Suddenly the doorbell rings, and Deet wonders who that could be. Turo soon gets a text on his phone from Tachishi, who tells him she's outside his door. Deet's eyes suddenly turn bone-chillingly ice, and she doesn't speak to him again until the next day. The next day, Toru leaves work and he remembers he had such a good thing going with Date yesterday, but Tachishi came to ruin it. He ensured to tell her not to come to his house that day, so he goes back home to improve Date's mood. When he gets back, he finds Ria, so she excitedly tells him it's her turn today. Toru wonders what she means by her turn, but soon remembers that Date said something about rock, paper, scissors, and something about finally getting him alone. He asks Ria if Toru went back to the other world, so Ria says she went with Shizuku. Toru realizes the two ladies have been using rock, paper, scissors to decide on which days to come to his place, and he guesses it must have been Shizuku's idea. Eventually, he asks her what she wants for dinner, so she says she'll make dinner. Toru remembers the destruction she cooked up the last time, so he suggests they eat out instead since they've never gone out on the town together alone. She agrees and quickly rushes to change. She soon appears in a beautiful outfit and tells him it's the same one that he bought for her the other day. She asks him if it looks alright, so he tells her it looks perfect. While they're out on the street, Toru asks Ria what she'd like to eat today, so she points to a random food joint a lot of people are moving towards, since she's not familiar with Japanese food. Turns out to be a gyudon joint, so Toru suggests they try somewhere else, since it's their big night out. She insists that it looks very tasty, so they go in to get a seat, but the other guys at the table look at Toru with a death stare because this isn't a date spot and couples aren't supposed to come to a gyudon joint. Toru was expecting this, but they're soon served their food. Bro says it tastes so great, and her beautiful expression seems to purify the savage souls of the warriors that were scowling at Toru. When they leave, Roa asks what they're going to do now, so Toru says there's something that's just perfect for seeing the sights of this world. He takes her to something called a monorail, and she's surprised that people ride that. They enter one and they are able to get the front seats and see the beautiful city. While they're moving, Ria asks Toru what the various buildings she's seeing are, so he tells her their names. When they get out of the train, Toru notices it's getting chilly at night, so he asks Ria if she's chilly. She admits that she is, so she grabs his hand and presses it in him to warm him up. They soon get home while holding hands and Toru rushes to let go when he realizes how tightly he's holding her. He asks her if she enjoyed the monorail, so she says she did. She brings up the fact that he spent last night alone with Date, so he asks her if she enjoyed himself more with her. She says she can tell why he must like Date more, since she's prettier than someone like her. However, Toru grabs her and tells her not to think that way because he cares for her too. They share a moment, but Miri soon rushes in and tells Toru that there's something she wants to ask him. Miri guesses that Ria is trying to raise her max level by kissing Toru, and she butts in to try to kiss Toru too. While Toru tries to push Miri away, Ria becomes morbid and asks him what he means by kissing to increase levels. The others soon calm down, and they explain the skill with the long spelling to her. Ria insists that it sounds absurd, and Toru says he's never heard of it either, but Miri figured it out by using her character appraisal. Ria soon remembers that the reason her max level increased back then was because she kissed Toru, so she asks him if he's been kissing a wide variety of girls. Toru starts to panic, and he explains that he's not been kissing a wide variety, but he would feel bad to see someone stuck at their level cap. Ria asks him if he's already kissed Miri and Datit, and Toru starts to stammer. Ria soon begins to cry, so Toru apologizes for not telling her, and Miri starts apologizing too. However, Ria says the reason she's crying is because she's so far from her max level that she'll never get to kiss Toru. Because of that, Miri suggests Toru just kiss Ria as much as he did Dit and herself. Ria asks Toru if he wouldn't hate that, but Toru tells her he wouldn't and he'd give her as much as she can take. Excited, Miri pushes Ria towards him, and Ria asks her to wait a second. Miri asks her if she doesn't want to, so Ria says she can't while Miri is watching them, but Miri tells her not to mind her, and she urges them to take it to the end. Ria demands to know what she means by taking it to the end, and she asks Miri why she even came here. Miri soon remembers that she came here to speak to Toru about setting up the festival stalls, so Ria asks her to hurry up and talk so they can get back to what they were doing. When Miri leaves, Ria and Toru kiss, and Ria says that 3 times isn't enough because it makes her yearn for more. Toru tells her they can go as many times as she wants, but Ria says she'd feel bad for Miri if she does more after sending her home like that. Eventually, Toru asks Ria if she hates the Thieves Guild, so Ria tells him she used to, but she's found out that they're not as bad after working with them. Toru agrees that they just don't go around stealing whatever they please, and he hopes they wouldn't need to commit any dangerous crimes if business goes well. Toru says he hopes his knowledge comes in handy, and he wants to use the same process to get the orphanage back on its feet. That touches Ria, so she asks him if he means it, so he says he wants to help Nick, Mary, and her. That touches her, so she asks for one more kiss. The next morning, Toru wakes up with Ria by his side. He says this reminds him of when she just came here, but as he's about to step out, she grabs him and asks if she can get another kiss. However, Date soon bursts in with Shijuku on her back, holding her down. Shijuku apologizes that she tried to stop Date, but Date protests that Ria can't take all of it, and she asks Toru to kiss her too. Sometime later, Tachishi shows Noella a picture she drew of her, which surprises Noella. Noella is amazed that this is the impression she gives, and Toru tells Tachishi that she did a great job capturing her features. So does Shizuku. Apparently, construction in the redevelopment area is finally wrapping up, so Ria, Deet, and Miri went there to help. Meanwhile, Tachishi draws pictures of Noella so they can use it for the flyers. After Toru receives the picture from her, he scans the picture and adds it to Noella's write-up and map. He soon uses an image editing program to bring it all together, and when he shows Noella, she admits that she's stunned by the tools used in this world. While they're doing that, the ladies enter and they announce that the setup is almost done. When Miri sees the picture of Noella, she laughs that she looks cute. The other ladies admit it came out pretty well and it'll attract many people, which makes Noella embarrassed. Shortly after, Shizuku informs Toru that the orcs have arrived, so he lets Anami and one of his wives in. They come in with the rainbow fish he asked for, and they gather a lot of them that are a perfect size for goldfish scooping. Toru thanks them, then shows them the things they're trading to them. He informs them the cola can neutralize poison, so it'll be effective against the blow darts. He also adds in some food and condiments, and Anami becomes excited because he's not had Japanese food in a long time. After they receive the package, Toru asks them to tell the elder that his wives said hello. After they're gone, Dit suggests they start moving since the flyers are ready. Toru asks Ria and Dit to hand out flyers in the town on the surface, and at the Adventurers Guild. Then he asks Miri and Noella to hand out flyers on the first level of the dungeon, and Miri says she'll have all the guild members join them to hand them out. The ladies soon leave with several copies of the flyer, and Toru concludes that all they can do now is to wait for the day of the event. On the day of the Thieves Guild festival, Toru prepares to head out, and when he gets there, he is amazed by the crowd that has gathered. Noella finds him and she tells him this many people showed up because of him. She adds that everyone has been doing their part too, and she offers to show him around. She takes him to where Ria and Laika, the folks from the orphanage, are running a food tent, and then to where Dit is running a tent where she shares crepes which the people enjoy. The last place, which seems to be gathering the most crowds, is the Rainbow Fish Scoop. After the event, the group enjoy some cola to rejoice over completing their first step of the Thieves Guild redevelopment plan. Toru admits that he didn't know the Goldfish Scoop would draw so many people, so Miri declares that she knew it would be the most popular. While they're eating, Ria tells Didit that she'll have to let her try her stall's crepes next time, and Didit says she can because they're as good as the ones from the Don Quixote discount store. Meanwhile, Tachihudi doesn't sit with the others, and she figures that this house must be cursed after all, since it has the power to summon women to it. Later, Shizuku tells Toru that everything worked out, and Toru agrees but reminds her that he's just worried that they have a long road ahead of them. He knows there'll still be all sorts of sticky situations that will come up in the apartment in the future, so Shizuku tells him she knows he can succeed. She says everyone will help him out, including herself. Toru pats her and thanks her because he knows he can handle everything as long as everyone is with him. Later, Noella informs Toru that a messenger from the Fulbarim Company came to the Thieves Guild recently. Apparently, they wanted to discuss investing with them upon the completion of the redevelopment plan, and that excites Toru. Noella asks him if he can come along with her to the company sometime in the future, so he agrees. Suddenly, Deed grabs Toru and asks why he's flirting with Noella. She asks Toru if he's still trying to become the dungeon master and reminds him of the promise he made to her. Soon after, Ria comes to grab Turu's other arm and she tells Deet not to cling to Master Toru. Miri soon joins in on the fun, and so does Tachiishi. Sometime later, Toru returns home and he's welcomed by Ria and Shizuku. Deet tells him he's late and reminds him that he promised he'd come with them to the dungeon today, so he apologizes that his work ran a little long. Suddenly, Miri comes out of the bath naked to welcome Toru, and the others ask her to put on some clothes. When they dress up, Toru apologizes for keeping them waiting, and they all decide to hit the road.